Chapter 11:18. Swish, the sharp arrow was released. This arrow was extremely fast and turned into a stream of light, shooting towards that strange demonic beast. Ling Han nodded to himself. The power of this arrow might not be comparable to the annihilating dragon star arrow, but the difference was not that big. However, if he used this bow and arrow to execute the annihilating dragon star arrow, the power would definitely be stronger. If he used the ultimate arrow, then it would be even more powerful. Ding! The sharp arrow hit the target, emitted a series of sparks, and then bounced back. That demonic beast seemed to have been startled awake and suddenly stood up. This was like a carpet being picked up from the middle and then lifted up. It was extremely strange. But in the process of being lifted up, this demonic beast's form was also changing, from a thin carpet to a ferocious tiger. It was 30 meters long, 15 meters tall, and its entire body was scarlet red. Its neck hair seemed to be burning, and it was awe-inspiring. Everyone was shocked, not because of the demonic beast's appearance, but because Xiao Cici's arrow did not have any effect at all. This was very shocking. The strength of this demonic beast is beyond our expectations. What do we do? Force our way in? Why don't we use a few people to lure this demonic beast away first, then open the door and leave together? This is a good idea. There is no point in wasting time here. Everyone nodded. After a discussion, they decided that Du En Xixian and Su Jing would lure the demonic beast away, while the remaining people would be responsible for opening the door. They were all prodigies of the current generation. Since the plan was made, they would naturally carry it out without any hesitation. Ugly monster, come and chase us. The three of them started to provoke the demonic beast, but that demonic beast was lazy and couldn't be bothered with them. It was as if it had been shot by an arrow earlier but didn't chase after them. Duan and the other two hurriedly attacked, shooting out waves of essence force at that demonic beast. This demonic beast was too lazy to bother with them at first, but after being hit so many times, it finally couldn't take it anymore. With a roar, it charged at the three of them. This pounce was extremely fast. Duan and the other two scattered and escaped, using the terrain here to play hide-and-seek with this demonic beast. Ling Han and the others also rushed out and started to attack that door. Bang bang bang, the loud noises continued. But what surprised them was that the door was unbreakable. Everyone unleashed their ultimate techniques, but no matter how powerful their attacks were, which could insta-kill even ordinary elites at the peak stage of the consummate level of the mountain river tier, they were completely useless against this massive door. I can't open it at all. They had to admit that their strength was like a mayfly encountering a tree in front of this door. They were completely unshakable. It's on the tiger's neck. Xiao Cici was meticulous and pointed at the demonic beast. Everyone looked over and saw that there was actually a key tied around the neck of the demonic beast. Come, we must defeat this ferocious tiger and obtain the key to open the door. No tricks. Then let's call Brother Du and the others back and fight with all our strength. Everyone was filled with heroic spirit. Previously, they had only decided to lure the tiger away from the mountain because they didn't want to waste time. But now that they could only fight, they had nothing to fear. Shui Yanyu and the spear-wielding man retreated to one side. They could not possibly interfere in this kind of battle. Otherwise, they would be courting death. This demonic tiger was very powerful. Otherwise, Duan and the others would not have needed to lure it away. They could have just trapped it at one side. Everyone sent out a signal for Duan and the others to return. Duan and the others circled back, and couldn't help but feel strange when they found that the door was still locked. There's no need to ask. This door can't be opened at all. We need to use the key hanging around that demonic beast's neck, Guanrong explained. Then let's fight. Duan and the others were not the slightest bit afraid. The 8 great prodigies stood side by side, welcoming the demonic tiger that had run back. This demonic tiger was somewhat unbelievably powerful. There were as many as 80 divine patterns on its body. What kind of concept was this? It was equivalent to an 8-star genius. Moreover, it was at the peak stage of the consummate level of the mountain river tier in the first place, and added with the power of 8 stars, it was so powerful that it had no friends. No wonder it was a team of 10 people. Although Ling Han and the others were all prodigies among prodigies, they would still be defeated if they encountered this demonic beast. Theoretically, the number of 10 people could make up for the gap of 1 star of battle prowess. After all, these prodigies had not formed the 5th mountain river yet, and were practically helpless against this demonic beast. Come! The 8 of them were all brimming with confidence. Aside from Ling Han, the other 6 had all reached the peak stage of the consummate level of the mountain river tier, and their power was as high as 6 stars. Added with the secret techniques that they had grasped, their battle prowess was at least 7 stars, and when they used their ultimate moves, their battle prowess would definitely reach 8 stars. Thus, the possibility that they would win was still relatively high. I'll focus on attacking from the front, Ling Han said. This received the complete approval of Xiao Sisi, Su Jing, and Duan. Though Xiao Wuk was very displeased, he did not object. They knew that the toughness of Ling Han's physique was far superior to theirs, and he was the best choice to fight from the front. Meanwhile, Li Xian and the others had never seen Ling Han's defenses, and were slightly surprised. A cultivator in the high extreme of the mountain river tier would fight from the front. But even Xiao Wuk did not object, so they naturally could only believe him. Ling Han drew out the divine demon sword. After it had awakened, it immediately charged towards the demonic tiger. Peng the demonic tiger waved its paw, and instantly sent Ling Han flying. Its power was too strong, and had almost reached the true pinnacle of the mountain river tier. Ling Han was completely not qualified to stand against it. Wah! He spat out a mouthful of blood, and couldn't help but feel gloomy. Previously, he had just been sucked clean by Empress Luan Xing, and had only recovered a little with great difficulty. Now he was beaten to the point of spitting blood again. Was there a grudge between them? This strike dislocated a few of his bones, but Ling Han only shook his origin power, and his bones naturally returned to their original positions. With a spring of his feet, he charged back again. He used the fast technique, and his attacks were like a tidal wave. However, though Ling Han's physique was freakish, that demonic beast was not simple either. Under Ling Han's strikes, it was similarly unaffected, as if it were indestructible. This was really inconceivable. Previously, it had turned into a carpet that was soft to the extreme, but now it was as if it had been forged from high-grade godly metal, and was incredibly hard. How could these two completely different qualities possibly appear on the same body? The demonic beast pounced, its battle prowess powerful, and it had an aura of supremacy. Ling Han held it back from the front, and the 7 of them attacked with all their might, but every attack was a waste of effort. This demonic tiger's freakish defense even surpassed that of Ling Han's. This is definitely not a demonic beast, but a puppet, Ling Han concluded. He only possessed such a physique because he had cultivated the indestructible Heaven Scroll, so how could any random cat or dog compare to him? However, if this demonic tiger was a puppet forged from godly metal, then it was easy to understand. As long as level 5 godly metal was used to forge it, its defense would naturally be unsolvable by mountain river tier elites. This could also explain why its power was so strong. Chapter 11:20. Here, take it, kids, the stone tablet said. 10 jade bottles appeared out of thin air and were placed on the ground. Evidently, 1 bottle for each person. This was a team's victory, so everyone received the same reward. It didn't matter who contributed the most to get more benefits. Everyone picked up a pill bottle. From this, it could be seen that Xiao Wuk had the upper hand. Evidently, the spear-wielding man was only his subordinate, so he naturally had to hand over the good stuff. Ling Han picked up the pill bottle, but there was no label on it. He asked, "Excuse me, what pill is this?" "Purple Pattern Mountain River Pill," the stone tablet said. "What is this?" No one had heard of this pill before. After consuming it, your strength will increase by 1 star for the next 2 hours, the stone tablet explained. That's lousy. Ling Han couldn't help but be disappointed. Hey, you should learn to say thank you after taking something from someone else, the stone tablet said with dissatisfaction. Moreover, you've only passed the first stage. How can you expect to receive such a precious reward? So you're saying that we can still receive rewards after passing the 2nd and 3rd stages? Ling Han asked. That's right. As long as you're strong enough, the stone tablet said. Instantly, everyone was filled with fighting spirit. They weren't moved by the rewards, but they were all the most powerful prodigies of their generation. They had great ambitions and were confident that they could become the first. What's the next stage? Ling Han asked. Why should I tell you? The stone tablet said. If you want to know, experience it for yourself. However, I can tell you that the second stage is a maze. You'll only receive rewards if you can pass it within 2 hours. There's no need to form teams for this stage, nor are you allowed to form teams. You may go. The stone tablet didn't say anything else. A staircase appeared in front of them, leading to the second level. Everyone, let's go. Duan smiled and took the lead. However, Ling Han didn't move. He was curious. Since this was a tomb, why was there a test and challenge? Even if this old senior had left behind a wisp of his will, wouldn't it be better for him to guard his tomb? Why did he have to make it seem like a disciple of a large sect? However, since there was a reward, he still wanted to have some fun. He wouldn't lose anything anyway. Ling Han, didn't you want to fight? Xiao Wuk pointed at Ling Han. Bring it on. Ling Han naturally wasn't afraid. On account of the fact that we fought together just now, I won't kill you. I'm just letting you know that there's always someone stronger than you out there. So don't be too arrogant. Who would have thought that Xiao Wuk would actually say something like this? Ling Han was slightly astonished. He had initially thought that Xiao Wuk was a petty and narrow-minded person. He hadn't thought that he would be so broad-minded. He pondered for a moment, then said, Since you've said that, I'll spare your life as well. I just want you to understand. Haha, you really are arrogant, Xiao Wuk said coldly. Come and fight. He shouted softly, and more than 60 divine runes appeared on his hands. Behind him, mountains and rivers appeared, exuding a terrifying aura. More than 60 divine inscriptions meant that he had the strength of 6 stars. You want to threaten me with just this? Ling Han smiled faintly. It wasn't as if his opponent hadn't seen his defenses before. Although the power of 6 stars above the peak stage of the consummate level of the mountain river tier was very powerful, it was still not enough to defeat him. Of course, that's not all. Xiao Wuk retrieved a black bracer and put it on his hand. With a wave of his hand, the bracer was activated, and the patterns engraved on it all lit up. Instantly, the number of divine patterns on his hand increased drastically. 71. That means his strength has increased by 1 star. Ling Han was surprised. You didn't use this divine artifact when we were crossing the stone statue formation. It's not that I don't want to use it. It's just that this god tool is damaged, and it can only last for the time it takes for an incense stick to burn. Xiao Wuk didn't hide anything, and he revealed the truth. It would have taken more than half an incense stick of time to pass through the stone statue array. Thus, even if he had used this divine artifact, he would have only been able to advance a little further. It would have been impossible for him to pass through. Ling Han laughed and said, Are you confident that you can defeat me in half an incense stick's time? It's more than enough, Xiao Wuk said proudly. Although Ling Han's defenses were astonishing, Xiao Wuk's current power was close to the pseudo-sun moon tier. If he unleashed a secret technique, he might even be able to kill Ling Han. Hehe. I hope that you can maintain your confidence. Ling Han smiled as he retrieved the lion seal. This seal could be used 10 times in total, and depending on how long it was used each time, the maximum number of times it could be used might decrease. His battle prowess was far inferior to Xiao Wuk's. After all, there was a clear gap between their cultivation levels. If they fought under normal circumstances, he would definitely be tortured. How could a proud person like him be willing to be tortured? Thus, he didn't hesitate to use the lion seal again. He slapped the divine seal onto his body, and divine patterns instantly appeared on his body. A quick count revealed that there were as many as 800 divine patterns in total. Who? Xiao Wuk spluttered, his face filled with astonishment. He only had 70 or so divine patterns, yet Ling Han had 800. How big was this gap? It wasn't just 10 times. Rather, it was 1 major tier plus a few dozen minor levels. No matter how prodigious he was, how could he defeat elites at the Sun Moon tier? Moreover, Ling Han's current power wasn't just at the Sun Moon tier. He was at the consummate level of the Sun Moon tier. I admit defeat, Xiao Wuk said with a bitter expression. Ling Han broke into a smile and said, Do you think I'll stop fighting just because you said that I admit defeat? I've already used the lion seal once, so how can I let this go? He charged forward and spread open his hands. Divine patterns swirled around him, and boundless power surged into his body. His power had already completely dominated Xiao Wuk, and Ling Han didn't even need to use any techniques. He easily grabbed Xiao Wuk, and then gave him a good beating. Although his impression of Xiao Wuk had improved slightly, it only erased his killing intent. He still had to beat Xiao Wuk, and there was no need for him to hold back. "You've gone too far," Xiao Wuk wailed. However, Ling Han completely ignored him and continued to beat him up. The spear-wielding man was dumbstruck. In his mind, Xiao Wuk was an invincible war god, and he should be invincible among those at the same cultivation level. Yet now he was being beaten up by someone who was a minor level lower than him? Regardless of the reason, the truth was the truth. No matter what, a young King Tier should be invincible. After giving Xiao Wuk a good beating, Ling Han casually tossed him to the side. "Ling Han, when we meet again at the Majestic Heaven sect in the future, I'll definitely make you pay for this humiliation," Xiao Wuk shouted. Ling Han laughed and said, "You won't have that chance." He was advancing at a rapid pace, and the gap between him and Xiao Wuk would become smaller and smaller. Moreover, the Sun Moon tier was an extremely difficult hurdle to overcome. It was definitely possible for him to catch up to Xiao Wuk in a short period of time. "Wife, let's go." Ling Han held Shui Yinyu's hand as they walked toward the second floor. Chapter 11:21. According to that unreliable guy, it's a maze next, and we can't team up, so we'll be forced to separate. "Are you going to enter the Black Tower?" Ling Han asked. Shui Yinyu thought for a moment, shook her head and said, "No, I'm going to do it myself." "There might be danger," Ling Han warned. "I know." Shui Yinyu nodded, and then looked at Ling Han seriously. "I don't want to be your burden. I want to be able to help you." Feeling the beauty's love, Ling Han couldn't help but feel moved. But he didn't know what to say and said, "Then help me give birth to a monkey first." "Damn pervert." Shui Yinyu rolled her eyes at him. Ling Han laughed, stopped, and pulled her into his arms, saying, "Be careful." "I will." Ling Han kissed her forehead and strode away. Shui Yinyu paused, and suddenly found that there were two divine seals in her pocket. They were the Vajra seal and the Lion seal. Before she could speak, she saw that Ling Han had already disappeared around the corner of the stairs. She hurriedly chased after him, and saw that he was already on the second floor. In front of her was a wall that was piled up with stones. It seemed to be disorderly, forming a large area. This was already the second floor, and she had unknowingly separated from Ling Han. This was not the first time she had seen this kind of method. Previously, the cultivators of the Mountain River, Sun Moon, and Heavenly Body Tier had also unknowingly separated. She couldn't help but pick up the two divine seals. Ling Han had left the divine seals to her because he was worried about her. And because he was afraid that she would refuse, he stuffed them in, not giving her a chance to speak at all. Shui Yinyu was dazed for a moment, and then remembered that Ling Han had the Black Tower, so he should be fine. Only then did she pull herself together, and began to examine the stone formation in front of her. In the same place but seemingly in a different space, Ling Han was also examining the stone formation. Without a doubt, this was that maze. It can move. Ling Han observed for a while, and found that the stone walls could move on their own, and thus completely changed the path, passing within 2 hours. Does that mean we have to figure out the pattern? A confident smile appeared on Ling Han's face. In the last few years of his last life, he had been exploring ancient sites, and had come into contact with formations quite a bit. Now, though the level of this formation had greatly increased, his cultivation level had also greatly increased, and his spirit had become much stronger. The stronger one's soul was, the stronger one's ability to deduce would be. This was an extremely critical factor when refining pills, creating puppets, setting up formations, and breaking formations. He stared at the array formation, his eyeballs moving slightly, but at an extremely high frequency. This was him memorizing the changes of the array formation, and then he was deducing them. If he entered into the Black Tower and comprehended it with the help of the reincarnation tree, 1 day would be equivalent to 1 year. Thus, he would naturally be able to decipher it in an extremely short amount of time. However, under the premise that he only needed to spend 2 hours to pass the test and there was a reward, he did not believe that his deduction ability could not do that. His spirit was already operating at a high level, and the corners of his mouth soon revealed a smile. 36 transformations and 7 traps. If you really enter those places, you'll be trapped. That's enough. He started walking, and entered into the stone bewildering formation. He walked left for a while and then right for a while. He was extremely calm, and it took him less than an hour to walk out of the stone bewildering formation. Another large hall appeared in front of him. Xiao Sisi, Duan, and the others who had set out earlier had already arrived here. Even Xiao Wuk was here. It could be seen that prodigies were prodigies, and they all had astonishing attainments in the field of deduction. However, this was also because this formation was relatively simple, and didn't differentiate the top-notch prodigies. If the difficulty was increased infinitely, then there could be a huge gap of several years or even several decades. There was also a stone tablet here. Ling Han nodded at Xiao Sisi and the others in greeting before walking toward the stone tablet, and saying, "I successfully passed. Where's the reward?" "Damn brat, remember to call me senior," the stone tablet said angrily. "How should I address senior?" Ling Han asked. Xiao Sisi and the others immediately looked concerned. They also wanted to know the origins of this large tomb. Constructing a tomb in the galaxy was far too astonishing. "Haha, I used to be invincible in my era, so you guys can call me the Invincible Paragon Saint," the stone tablet said. How shameless. Everyone shook their heads in their hearts. They had to admit that this person was definitely extremely powerful when he was alive, but it was a bit too much to call him invincible. The world was vast, and there were as many powerful beings as there were clouds in the sky. Who could truly be invincible? Moreover, even saints couldn't escape death. Could an invincible paragon saint defeat the Tao of heaven and earth? "Oh, so it's Senior Invincible," Ling Han said. However, there was no hint of respect or admiration in his tone, which made the invincible paragon saint feel extremely depressed. "Damn brat. Forget about my awe-inspiring past. A real man doesn't boast about his past achievements." The invincible paragon saint humphed. "Here your reward." Ling Han focused his gaze, and there was another pill vial on the ground. "What is it this time?" he asked. "Purple Pattern Mountain River Pill," the invincible paragon saint replied. "Still the same thing?" Ling Han's lips twitched, and he was clearly very dissatisfied. To most people, alchemical pills were extremely precious. It wasn't surprising that high-tier alchemical pills would cause chaos and bloodshed. However, to Ling Han, he was the alchemy emperor. What alchemical pill couldn't he refine after obtaining the pill recipe and researching it? Thus, alchemical pills were the things he hated the most. Moreover, this was a Purple Pattern Mountain River pill. "Wrong, wrong, wrong." The invincible paragon saint repeated, wrong 3 times to emphasize his point. "This isn't the Purple Pattern Mountain River pill from last time. This is a Purple Pattern Mountain River pill that's 1 star more powerful. Although you emphasized it like a tongue twister, it still doesn't change the fact that this is a Purple Pattern Mountain River pill. It's just that its quality is slightly higher." Ling Han shook his head. He was an alchemist, so he was naturally very clear that when a shoddy alchemist was concocting pills, even a single batch of pills could be uneven. Some of them reached the standard of 10 stars while others were only 7 stars, 8 stars, and even 5 stars. Of course, such lousy alchemists made up 99% of alchemists, and this was actually very normal. However, Ling Han's alchemy level was too high, which was why the invincible paragon saint looked down on him. "No, I'll take it back." The invincible paragon saint was even more displeased. Ling Han hurriedly put the pill away. Since he was giving it to him for free, why wouldn't he accept it? "What's the next trial?" he asked. The invincible paragon saint humphed and said, "You want me to take care of you with that attitude of yours? Dream on." Ling Han laughed loudly and said, "Everyone else is respectful to you. I'm the only one who's different. Based on this, shouldn't you open the back door for me?" The invincible paragon saint sighed and said, "I suddenly realized that you're not just a normal kind of despicable." Chapter 11:22. Ling Han's face couldn't help but darken. Why was he cursing? Couldn't he speak properly? Xiao Sisi and the others covered their mouths and laughed. They admired Ling Han very much. Although this invincible paragon saint had died long ago, and only a wisp of his consciousness remained, it was clear that there was an astonishing technique set up in this large tomb. This wisp of his consciousness could control and operate it, and it was so powerful that even heavenly body tier elites had to obey it. Thus, how could they dare to be disrespectful in front of him? Every single one of them was filled with fear and trepidation. This had nothing to do with geniuses or arrogance. In the world of martial art, strength reigns supreme. Without sufficient strength, how could one be arrogant? Ling Han, on the other hand, spoke with confidence and composure in front of the other party. This caused them to be filled with admiration when they secretly said that the other party was reckless. Most importantly, it seemed like Ling Han had fallen into the invincible paragon saint's trap. Otherwise, the invincible paragon saint wouldn't have called him a lowly person. Instead, he would have directly killed him. Since you're so sincere, I'll be kind and tell you. The stone tablet glowed faintly. The third stage requires you to decipher a sword. What do you mean by breaking a sword? Ling Han asked. The invincible paragon saint was a little annoyed, and he said, "You don't even understand this? I'm just trying to decipher a sword technique. If you can decipher it, you can pass. If you can't, then scram. You'll get a reward if you solve it?" Ling Han asked again. The invincible paragon saint was also a little speechless. Can't you be a little more mature? Why are you always thinking about rewards? You can't be too greedy. Sai, forget it. There's no point in asking, Ling Han said with a shrug. It's definitely still the purple pattern mountain river pill. At most, its quality will be slightly higher, and it'll be able to increase one's strength by 3 stars. The invincible paragon saint was just about to say something, yet he was forcefully silenced. Indeed, this was the reward for the third stage. Fuck, to be able to increase your strength by 3 stars, isn't that awesome in a battle of the same level? Are you still not satisfied? But as a senior, did he have the nerve to argue with a junior? Scram, hurry up and scram. You're making me angry every time I see you, you brat. There's no rush. I'm still waiting for someone. Ling Han simply sat down cross-legged. The Azura Demon Emperor had been drawn into the Black Tower, and the one he was waiting for was naturally Shui Yinyu. Although there was no danger in the maze, Ling Han was still a little worried when he didn't see anyone. Brat! The invincible paragon saint muttered to himself, you better not be that person. Otherwise, I'll be very depressed. Xiao Sisi and the others didn't wait any longer, and they entered the third level and started to challenge the trial of one sword. Ling Han waited for another hour or so before he finally saw Shui Yinyu come out. The beautiful woman's face was full of disappointment. Although she had successfully walked out, she had more than 2 hours. In the Scarlet Heaven Academy, although she wasn't the top genius, she could at least be called a genius. But here she discovered that she could only be a burden. See, Ling Han had deliberately waited for her here. Wife, what are you thinking? Ling Han hugged her lightly and comforted her. Many people mature slowly. Moreover, as long as your husband works hard enough, I'll find natural treasures for you, and you'll directly become a saint after eating them. Shui Yinyu rolled her eyes at him. Did this guy know how to comfort someone? Wasn't this an even greater blow to her confidence? The invincible paragon saint suddenly said, "He brat, you're dreaming. Do you think natural treasures that can help you become a saint in a single step are cabbages? Do you think you can pick them up by the roadside?" However, Ling Han was interested, and he said, "There really are godly treasures that can help you become a saint in a single step." He had only been comforting Shui Yinyu, and hadn't thought that he would actually be fooled. The world is vast, and there are all kinds of rare treasures. The invincible paragon saint seemed to be slightly rueful, and said, "There are extremely poisonous things that can kill even saints upon contact. There are also supreme medicines that can refine them, and mortals can reach the heavens in a single step. If that's the case, then things like talent are far less important than luck," Ling Han said. "What you say is not without reason," the invincible paragon saint said. "However, it's rare for such a lucky person to appear even in millions and millions of years. Moreover, even if they obtain supreme medicines and become a saint in a single step, it's ultimately not their own comprehension. and they'll need to spend millions and millions of years to master it. If their aptitude is lacking, they won't be able to make any progress in their lifetime. Ling Han broke into a smile and said, I believe that I can become such a lucky person. Moreover, one supreme medicine may not be enough. Although the heavenly phoenix divine maiden and Hellion Xuanshua's aptitude was extraordinary, it was impossible for them to become saints. Moreover, he still had his parents Lu Yutong and other beauties. He couldn't just watch them grow old and die, could he? If there was no other way, then so be it. However, since there was a sliver of hope, he had to fight for it no matter what. He would harvest such supreme medicines and raise the strength of those around him. On the other hand, the Rain Emperor Ding Ping and the others were extremely talented in martial art, and they were also tenacious and unyielding. As long as they didn't die, there was a very high chance that they would become saints in the future. The invincible paragon saint almost vomited blood. Such a supreme medicine only appeared once in millions and millions of years. Obtaining it would mean accumulating several lifetimes of good fortune. Yet, Ling Han was fucking asking for a few. If you can truly obtain one supreme medicine, I'll be impressed by you. If you can obtain two, I'll change my surname to yours. Hey, it's fine if you change your surname to mine. I already have a son. Ling Han rejected with a smile. The invincible paragon saint was rendered speechless. This person was truly shameless. Hurry up and fuck off, he said impatiently. Otherwise, I'll really kick your face. Hold on. What does the next stage count as? Can two people do it together? Ling Han asked. Sure. In any case, you're only deciphering a sword technique. As long as you don't take too long, you'll receive a reward. The invincible paragon saint grumbled and said, I know that you're most concerned about the reward, so there's no need to ask any further. Ling Han wore a disdainful expression and said, It's just another purple pattern mountain river pill. At most, it'll only raise the grade by 3 stars. Be damn brat. The invincible paragon saint was so furious that his nose had become crooked. Ling Han chuckled and said, Senior, on the other hand, I hope that you can reward me with something different. Fuck off. The invincible paragon saint spat through gritted teeth. That was if he still had teeth. How boring. I already knew before I even passed the 3rd stage. The reward is still a purple pattern mountain river pill. Sigh. Ling Han grumbled in his mind as he held Shui Yinyu's hand and walked up the stairs to the 3rd level. There were many people standing here. There were mountain river tier cultivators, sun moon tier cultivators, and even heavenly body tier cultivators. Ling Han was slightly astonished. Shouldn't the 1st stage have eliminated a lot of people? Why were there still so many people here? At the forefront of the group, there was a humanoid figure formed from light that was currently brandishing a sword. This sword strike seemed to conform to some kind of true comprehension of the great Tao, and it was as if heaven and earth were crushing down upon them with each strike. Its might was astonishing. Is he here to decipher this sword technique? Ling Han examined it closely. This sword technique wasn't all that complicated, and its power lay in the Tao within it. It drew upon the regulations of heaven and earth, and when it was unleashed, it was incredibly profound. The timer had probably started from the moment they entered this place. However, everyone had their own starting point. This made Ling Han even more perplexed. Is this really a tomb? Although he didn't fight against the I'll hit you stone statue, he was sure that the attack power of this stone statue would also increase. Sure enough, he was choosing a successor? Ling Han didn't mind obtaining a Genesis tier inheritance. After all, this was the strongest power in the immortal realm. Even Venerable Trinity would go crazy if he came here. However, the invincible paragon saint didn't like him so much. Would he beat him up after he stood out? It was very possible that this unreliable, despicable saint would do something like that. Forget it, I have to go out no matter what, so I'll just have some fun. After receiving his reward, Ling Han headed to the 6th floor. It was still the Hit Me stone statue. However, the stone statue didn't move in the slightest after Ling Han's punch landed. Ling Han was astonished. His current power could surpass 6 stars, and this place was definitely ranked according to cultivation level. It was impossible for a mountain river tier cultivator to attack a heavenly body tier stone statue. Nor would it allow a heavenly body tier cultivator to attack a mountain river tier cultivator. That would be completely meaningless. Even a power of 6 stars couldn't win. Ling Han channeled a secret technique, and his divine patterns of flame were activated as he attacked the Hit Me stone statue. However, divine flames surged and charred the stone statue. However, this only increased the destructive power, and not the power of the strike. He wanted to consume a purple pattern mountain river pill. Yet he discovered that his spatial spirit tool had been sealed. In order to prevent the invincible Paragon Saint from discovering the Black Tower, he had stored the purple pattern mountain river pills into an ordinary spatial spirit tool. He could only rely on his own power to pass through this place. Ling Han unleashed the fast technique. However, the power of the fast technique lay in its speed, so it couldn't unleash a power that surpassed the limit. It was ineffective. Ling Han took a few more steps back before unleashing the annihilating dragon star arrow. Xiao xiao xiao. He used his body as the bow, and his origin power as the arrows. He unleashed one arrow after another, yet it was still useless. The stone statue didn't collapse. This time he was truly astonished. He had a power of 6 stars and he had unleashed a secret technique, yet he still couldn't pass through? 1/3 of the hourglass had already passed. Once the hourglass's time was exhausted, it would mean that he had failed. There hadn't been anyone else at the end of the 5th level, which meant that if he failed here, he would be directly sent to the 1st level. Then I'll use the ultimate arrow. This arrow instantly unleashed all of his power. Not only was it extremely fast, but its power was also incredibly terrifying. If even this couldn't succeed, then Ling Han would only be able to receive a beating. Ling Han took a deep breath before beginning to channel the ultimate arrow. As he channeled his secret technique, his origin power rapidly condensed in a short period of time. His physical strength was superior in terms of explosive power, so he could unleash a full power strike at any moment. Xiao! The arrow of origin power shot out, transforming into a streak of light. The arrow struck its target, and the Hit Me stone statue was instantly sent flying. Pass! A smile appeared on Ling Han's face, yet he plopped down onto the ground. He was completely out of strength. After a while, he finally recovered some of his strength. He stood up and walked out. The scenery around him swayed, and he saw the stone monument again. Brat, you've exceeded my expectations. I didn't think that you'd be able to pass the 6th level even though your power isn't even at 6 stars, the invincible Paragon Saint said. He didn't conceal the astonishment and admiration in his voice. It's just so. Ling Han feigned humility, yet his expression was filled with pride. He had done this on purpose. There was no need to be overly respectful toward an unreliable senior like him. Instead, this was more to the invincible Paragon Saint's liking. Although the invincible Paragon Saint kept yelling and rolling away, he would still take the initiative to speak to him. This was evident from this. I'll pay attention to you now. I don't believe that you'll be able to pass the 7th level, the despicable Paragon Saint said. Sure enough, he was starting to get angry with Ling Han. Chapter 11:25. On this level, Ling Han once again met Xiao Sisi and the others, as well as some older elites, some at the heavenly body tier, and some at the sun moon tier. Obviously, after passing the 6th level, everyone was very interested in the next level. They were all adjusting their condition to reach their peak before attempting the 7th level. Although Ling Han did not take the purple pattern mountain river pill seriously, what about the purple pattern sun moon pill and the star pill? This was especially so for the purple pattern heavenly pill. At Empress Luanxing's level, to say nothing of an increase of 4 or 5 stars in power, even an increase of 1 star would be enough for her to dominate the joint peace planet, and she would be invincible for the next 2 hours. Thus, this kind of alchemical pill was incredibly valuable. You have it, I also have it, so it's good for you and me. No one dared to use it rashly. This was a great weapon of deterrence. Otherwise, once the power was out of balance, it would cause a huge change and a majestic empire would be gone. Moreover, you only have a 6-star purple pattern star pill, while I have a 7-star one. The gap was also very large. Thus, everyone naturally had to charge forward with all their might. Ling Han did not find Shui Yinyu. This was very natural. She should have been eliminated long ago. After all, she was just a 2-star genius, so it was impossible for her to reach this level. He also adjusted himself, and after recovering his condition, entered the 7th level. There was nothing to hesitate about. Ling Han directly used the ultimate arrow. The stone statue fell, but it only fell and did not fly back. Ling Han couldn't help but shake his head in his mind. The path of beating people up would end here. The stone statue of the 8th level was definitely not something that could be knocked down with the ultimate arrow, unless he could reach the level of a 7-star or even 8-star genius. The 9th level 9 stars or even 10 stars, thankfully, other than hit me, there was still I'll hit you. Although Ling Han did not want to be hit, he wanted to know what kind of reward he would receive after passing the 9th level of the tower. He strode away. There was no one else here. Even a prodigy like Xiao Sisi, who had been specially sent to a small world by her elders to open the sky and build a perfect foundation, had not formed her 5th mountain river after all. She had not reached the pinnacle of the mountain river tier, and at most had the power of 6 stars. With the help of a 6-star power and some secret techniques, he might be able to pass through the 7th level, but it was impossible for him to pass through the 8th level. There was also a stone tablet here, but there was only a pill bottle on the ground this time. The invincible Paragon Saint didn't say anything. It was clear that he had previously speculated that Ling Han wouldn't be able to pass the 7th stage. However, now that he had been slapped in the face, he was probably embarrassed. Ling Han chuckled and put away the pill bottle. He couldn't open the stopper, so he obviously couldn't consume the pill here and use it to pass the test. He didn't attack the invincible Paragon Saint either. Instead, he sat down and adjusted his condition. He held a true origin stone in his hand and circulated his universal 8 desolation technique to draw upon the power of the true origin stone. His recovery rate was very fast. About 2 hours later, Ling Han stood up, walked up the stairs and entered the 8th floor. He chose I'll hit you. In terms of attack power, he didn't even have 6 stars of strength. Even if he used the ultimate arrow, there was a limit to how much he could do. However, in terms of defense, he could surpass a few stars. Come on. When he arrived in front of I'll hit you, the stone immediately came to life and punched him. Pung! Ling Han was instantly sent flying. However, before he could even land on the ground, the stone statue had already caught up to him and punched him again. So fast. So heavy. Ling Han thought to himself. This stone statue didn't have any special divine patterns on it, but it was especially powerful. He couldn't block its punch. However, so what? His defense had already reached the level of level 4 godly metal. If someone wanted to injure him with pure strength, they would have to be at the Sun Moon tier at least. Ling Han could only parry the stone statue's attacks. Under the storm-like attacks of the stone statue, he couldn't retaliate at all. He could only do his best to protect his face. Since he could only take a beating, it was still necessary for him to protect his handsome face. If he passed the hit you test, then his punch would be successful. However, this wasn't the case for taking a beating. Pung pung pung. It was as if the stone statue was determined to beat Ling Han to death, and it continued to attack him relentlessly. Only when the sand in the hourglass ran out did the stone statue retreat to the side. The 3 words on its chest had become pass. Ling Han gritted his teeth. Couldn't it beat him a little less? He walked out. As the scenery changed, the stone tablet appeared again, but there was one more person here. Empress Luanxing. This was very shocking. Empress Luanxing had actually reached this level. However, had she used offense or defense to reach this level? Ling Han didn't really believe it was the latter. After all, the indestructible heaven scroll was too special. If it was the former, then this Empress strength was a little unexpected. Logically speaking, with her strength, she should be able to flatten the Jade Drop and Eternity Sky Majestic Empire, so why hadn't she unified the joint peace planet? Of course, it was also possible that those 2 majestic empires had once been imperial empires, and had powerful trump cards. For example, super-killing formations that couldn't be moved would be insufficient for offense, but more than enough for defense. There had to be a reason why the 3 majestic empires had peacefully coexisted for millions of years. Empress Luanxing also arrived in front of Ling Han, a hint of astonishment appearing on her beautiful face, which was shrouded by the aura of primal chaos. She hadn't thought that there would actually be someone who could pass the first 8 levels, and more so that this person was actually Ling Han. A flash of killing intent flashed in her beautiful eyes. She, who had never been touched by a man before, actually sucked this guy's blood, bit his neck, and was even assaulted by this bastard. These scenes intertwined, causing her killing intent to boil. Even that wisp of stubbornness couldn't stop her determination to kill. Immediately, she delivered a palm strike. When heavenly body tier elites attacked, heaven and earth would lose color. Stop, 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 the stone statue spoke, and the terrifying attack immediately disappeared completely. Although I am also very displeased with this brat, entering this tower means that he is a seed. Before I give up on him, not a single one of them can die. Ling Han's heart thumped. There was an invincible paragon saint blocking him now, but what would he do after he left? He was in the Scarlet Heaven Academy, and the Great Ling Empire was also a subordinate nation of the Chaotic Star's majestic empire. He could run, but the temple couldn't. Sai, why did you come here to suck my blood? You're not a bat. Empress Luanxing only stared at Ling Han, and didn't attack again. She knew that she couldn't kill Ling Han here, so with her decisiveness, she naturally wouldn't waste her strength. However, the pervert who had molested her was right in front of her, yet she could only watch. This caused the Empress to become furious. She was the sovereign of a nation, the ruler of the world, yet she actually couldn't do anything to a subordinate? This is the last stage. Hurry up and start, I can't wait any longer, the invincible paragon saint said. Hurry if you can pass, I'll give you a huge surprise. Empress Luanxing was extremely decisive, and she immediately climbed the stairs to the 9th level. It was clear that her goal was to leave this tower as soon as possible, and then kill Ling Han. Ling Han shook his head. Come, I'm definitely going to use the Black Tower. Chapter 11:26. The 9th level was also the last level, and there were still 2 stone statues here. These were the brothers, hit me and I'll hit you. Sure enough, Empress Luanxing chose hit me, while Ling Han could only choose, I'll hit you. This made him feel a sense of despair. However, he hadn't formed his 5th mountain river yet, so his battle prowess hadn't reached the pinnacle yet. However, Empress Luanxing's power could actually pass the 8th level. This was too astonishing. Ling Han couldn't help but look at her. He wanted to personally witness her power. Wang! 4 stars appeared behind Empress Luanxing, exuding an ancient and desolate aura. Not bad, not bad. You've cultivated both the Sun-Moon tier and the Mountain River tier to a perfect level. Although you haven't formed your 5th heavenly body yet, your power has already reached 9 stars, the invincible paragon said, not hiding his praise. Ling Han was astonished. This empress was actually so freakishly talented. Didn't they say that even 5-star geniuses only existed in legends? However, this empress power had reached 9 stars, so her battle prowess was at least 9 stars, or perhaps even higher. However, to fight above 1 major tier, one needed 10 stars of power, not 10 stars of battle prowess. Thus, she couldn't rival heavenly body tier elites, at least not now. There was hope because she was completely capable of forming another heavenly body and cultivating the heavenly body tier to a level of perfection. However, it's very strange. Although I can sense that you should have formed your 5th mountain river, sun and moon, your power isn't as powerful as I imagined, the invincible paragon said again. I set up this tower for trials. As long as one's power has reached 8 stars, they can easily pass. However, you clearly have 9 stars of power, yet you can barely pass the 8th level. I don't know why. The invincible paragon saint was clearly very curious. Even an elite like him was like this, so it was clear that Empress Luanxing was hiding an astonishing secret. Empress Luanxing had suddenly risen to power 1 million years ago, and established the Chaotic Star's majestic empire. It occupied 1/3 of the joint peace planet's territory, and became one of the 3 supreme rulers. However, this empress seemed to have appeared out of thin air before this. She had suddenly risen to power, and no one knew where she had come from. There must be a big secret behind his rapid rise. Empress Luanxing didn't reply. Even when facing a former elite like the invincible paragon saint, she didn't restrain her domineering aura. She merely channeled the power of her heavenly bodies and pressed her slender hands down. numerous divine patterns intertwined, but after a quick count, there were only over 4,000 of them. Over 4,000 divine patterns could only be considered very powerful, but there was still a huge gap between him and the 9,999 divine patterns at the limit of the heavenly body tier. This was indeed far from reaching the power level of 9 stars. The invincible paragon saint was wrong. In truth, Empress Luanxing hadn't reached the level of 9 stars yet. However, how could that be possible? Although it was extremely likely that she was a despicable saint, if she didn't even have the ability to discern this, she would be better off killing herself with a piece of tofu. It was clear that Empress Luanxing was in the middle of unleashing a powerful technique. The aura of primal chaos surged around her, and the cloak behind her fluttered even though there was no wind. Her black hair also danced in the wind, making her appear both valiant and enchanting. In this world, it was likely that she was the only one who could combine these two completely different auras so perfectly. An apocalyptic scene appeared in the Empress' eyes. It was a pity that it was obscured by the aura of primal chaos, so Ling Han couldn't see it. However, the invincible paragon saint clearly could. He faltered slightly and said, "Huh? Why do I suddenly have an impression? However, I can't recall where I've seen it before." Ling Han was astonished. Elites didn't have bad memories. After all, their divine sense was powerful, so their memory was naturally astonishing. However, the invincible paragon saint actually said that he couldn't recall where he had seen it before. Just how long ago had it been? Could it be that he's still young? Otherwise, once he's cultivated to a certain level, there's no way that his memories would become blurry. Boom! Empress Luanxing attacked. And it was as if the heavens were collapsing as she struck out with her slender hand. Even in this sealed space, it was as if a black hole had appeared overhead, threatening to devour everything. Too powerful. Is this the power of 8 stars and above? Pung! The hit me was blasted to the ground, but he wasn't sent flying. Haha, what powerful power! Not bad, not bad. The invincible paragon saint praised. He then turned to Ling Han and said, "Brat, it's yours." Ling Han felt gloomy. On one hand he was hitting someone and on the other he was being hit. These were two completely different feelings. He sighed and walked over to the "I'll hit you" statue. Come. I still haven't cultivated my cultivation level to perfection, so I'll admit defeat. The stone statue immediately lashed out, bombarding Ling Han with a series of loud sounds. This time the stone statue's attacks were even more powerful. Ling Han naturally could only protect his handsome face as he took the brunt of the stone statue's attacks. He flew into a rage out of humiliation. After all, this was different from the 8th level. There was still the Empress beside him now. However, Empress Luanxing didn't look down on him. Being able to take a beating like this, was this something that anyone could do? However, this didn't dispel her killing intent. The sand in the hourglass quickly ran out, and the "I'll hit you" statue stopped. It didn't move in the slightest, and it was as if it were an ordinary stone statue. Where's the reward? Let's leave as soon as possible, Empress Luanxing urged. She naturally wasn't coveting the reward. Rather, she wanted to kill Ling Han after leaving this place. Ling Han hurriedly smiled and said, "There's no rush, no rush. Why don't we have some tea together?" Ha 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 ha. The invincible paragon saint laughed loudly and said, "Very good, very good. One possesses the most powerful attack, while the other possesses the most powerful defense. They're exactly my ideal partners." Ideal partner? Ling Han murmured. He then raised his voice and said, "Hey, hey, hey. Don't say things that will cause people to misunderstand." He 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 he. The invincible paragon saint laughed loudly. "Hey, what do you mean?" Ling Han asked. The invincible paragon saint laughed for a while before saying, "Next, it's time for my reward." He paused for a moment, and it was as if he were anticipating Ling Han and Empress Luanxing's questions. However, to his dismay, neither of them paid him any attention. Fuck. The invincible paragon saint was asking for a snub, so he could only continue, "I want to take your child as my disciple, and nurture him into the most powerful elite in the world." Pooh. Ling Han instantly spluttered. "Are you fucking retarded?" Meanwhile, the invincible paragon saint became excited, and he said, The child born from the combination of the most powerful attack and the most powerful defense will definitely possess these two great strengths. He'll be the most suitable disciple for me. Hey. Stop talking to yourself. That's impossible, Ling Han said with a shake of his head. Meanwhile, killing intent surged from Empress Luanxing's body. He actually wanted her and Ling Han to have a child? Was he seeking death? Haha, if I want you to have a child, then you have to have one. The invincible Paragon Saint laughed loudly and said, otherwise you can stay here for the rest of your lives. You can only leave when you give birth to my disciple. Fuck. Chapter 11:28. Empress Luanxing was clearly aware of this as well. She remained calm and collected, yet a desolate and ancient aura radiated from her body. It was as if she were about to break through the restrictions that Notionless Saint had placed on her and recover her powerful cultivation level. Multiple projections of giant snakes appeared behind her. Each of them was larger than a mountain, no larger than a star. It was as if they could swallow a star whole with a single gulp. 9 Snake Tribe. You're from the 9 Snake Tribe. Notionless Saint's voice suddenly sounded, filled with excitement and delight. Ha. No wonder I felt that your aura was familiar. So you're from the legendary 9 Snake Tribe. With this kind of bloodline and my guidance, my future disciple will definitely become the strongest in the world. 9 Snake Tribe. Ling Han was confused. Judging from Notionless Saint's excitement, the 9 Snake Tribe should be incredibly powerful. It was a pity that he had never heard of them before. Empress Luanxing remained unmoved, and she continued to attack the restrictions on her body. Young lady, don't waste your energy. Although you possess the bloodline of the 9 Snake Tribe, you're only at the heavenly body tier, after all. Meanwhile, I'm at the Genesis tier, and the Genesis tier is at the Saint tier. The gap between you and I is too vast. I can suppress the heavens with a single thought, so how can you break through the restrictions that I've set up? Notionless Saint said. Empress Luanxing refused to accept her fate. She was an overlord of a generation, so how could she allow herself to be captured without putting up a fight? Brat, what are you waiting for? Hurry up and do it. You're not tempted by such a beautiful woman? Are you a eunuch? Notionless Saint deliberately fanned the flames. Ling Han chuckled and said, truly, the eunuch is more anxious than the emperor. Fuck. Notionless Saint was slightly annoyed. He was a mighty saint, and if it weren't for the fact that he only had a remnant soul left, he could only hope that Ling Han and Empress Luanxing would give birth to the strongest disciple for him. Ling Han looked at Empress Luanxing and said, don't worry. Although I don't dare to say that I'm single-minded, I'm not a lecher either. Empress Luanxing was slightly embarrassed and annoyed. She had always been high and mighty, so why would she need the sympathy and charity of others? If it weren't for the fact that her cultivation level had been restricted, she would be able to slice Ling Han into pieces with a casual strike. However, the situation was stronger than the person. She couldn't remove the restriction on her body, so she really needed Ling Han's face. Otherwise, if Ling Han used force on her, she could only fight to the death. Brat, you sure are stubborn. I wonder how long you can last. In any case, I'm not in a hurry. I'll just play with you for a decade or 100 years, Notionless Saint said shamelessly. After that, his voice didn't ring out again, as if he really didn't want to talk to Ling Han anymore. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. Time passed quietly. In the space of the 9th level, only Ling Han and Empress Luanxing remained, a man and a woman. Ling Han had never thought of himself as a role model, but there were things a man could do and not do. No matter how charming the Empress of the Chaotic Star's majestic empire was, he would definitely not use force on a weak woman. This was a matter of principle, and his bottom line couldn't be broken. He cultivated every day. There was a demonic power source in his body, and the life essence here was also incredibly rich. His cultivation level definitely wouldn't be slow. However, it was a pity that he couldn't enter the Black Tower. Otherwise, he would be able to comprehend Tao under the reincarnation tree and improve even faster. Even so, he still progressed at a tremendous pace. The speed at which he advanced was absolutely astonishing. 10 days, 20 days, 1 month. Ling Han and Empress Luanxing could be said to be minding their own business. Although the two of them stayed in the same room, they basically didn't say a single word. Proud Empress, Ling Han thought. One had to know how much self-control it took for him to resist the urge to attack her. Damn old man. Damn old man. Ling Han shouted loudly. Damn brat, what did you call me? Notionless Saint asked in annoyance. You're old and disrespectful, so you're naturally a damn old man, Ling Han said with a chuckle. I say, damn old man, where are the others? Why do you care about the others instead of being a proper groom? Notionless Saint humphed. It was clear that he was extremely displeased. If it weren't for the fact that he only had a remnant soul left, perhaps even he would be interested in that 9-snake woman. Come, I can't leave for a while. Help me tell a few friends to leave first. Don't worry about me, Ling Han said. Why would I run errands for you? Notionless Saint asked in displeasure. He had once been a saint, yet he actually had to pass on a message for a junior now? This was far too embarrassing. Ling Han laughed loudly and said, You're the one who needs my help right now, so shouldn't you do some small things for me? Moreover, this is a matter between me and you, so why do you have to involve others? Damn brat. Notionless Saint muttered. Alright, I'll pass on your message to that woman. TSK. I didn't realize that you're still a devoted man. Ling Han didn't think that he was devoted. He didn't sleep with Empress Luanxing because he never forced himself on others, and also because he wanted a moment of pleasure. How was he going to deal with this in the future? Could it be that Empress Luanxing was the kind of weak woman who would be docile and obedient after being slept with? Impossible. At that time, only one of them would survive. Although Empress Luanxing also wanted to kill him now, this conflict wasn't irreconcilable. However, if he really slept with her, it would be a fight to the death. The two of them continued to waste time. Another 2 months passed, and Ling Han reached the peak stage of the high extreme. He was on the verge of breaking through. This was the opportunity that he had been waiting for. Transcending the heavenly tribulation. The world was vast, but the heavenly tribulation was the greatest. Heavenly tribulation wouldn't affect others for no reason. However, this sealed space would definitely be broken. At that time, Ling Han would be able to find an opportunity to escape. However, because he hadn't been able to comprehend Tao under the reincarnation tree, it took him another half a year to finally take the final step. Boom! The might of the heavenly tribulation was so great that even Genesis tier techniques couldn't block it. Thunderclouds appeared in the sky and started to wreak havoc. Huh! Notionless Saint exclaimed in surprise and said, Damn brat, what celestial pill did you eat? It hasn't even been a year. Yet you've already cultivated from the late stage of the high extreme to the peak stage. In fact, you can even advance to the consummate level. Cultivating from the late stage of the high extreme to the peak stage wasn't that astonishing. After all, it was still possible to achieve this by consuming natural treasures. However, how could the heavenly Tao be so easy to comprehend? What he didn't know was that there was still a wisp of demonic power in Ling Han's body. Although there was only a sliver of it left, it was still enough to help Ling Han reach the peak stage of the mountain river tier. Haha. So that's what you're planning, brat. You want to use the might of the heavenly tribulation to break open the cage that I've set up. Notionless Saint chuckled and said, Brat, aren't you underestimating me a little too much? Hong long long. A bolt of lightning descended, striking towards Ling Han. Ling Han faced the heavenly tribulation head-on. Right now, he didn't have any other thoughts, so he started to voluntarily shatter the godly bones in his body and accept the baptism of the heavenly tribulation. Empress Luanxing retreated to the side. Although the divine lightning continued to crash endlessly, she wouldn't be swept up by the heavenly tribulation as long as she didn't actively attack. Of course, if Ling Han attacked her, and she retaliated, the heavenly tribulation would treat both of them equally. Ling Han's physique had clearly reached the level of level 4 godly metal, so why was he so easily shattered by the lightning? Chapter 11:29. Could it be that Ling Han is shattering the god's bone by himself? Empress Luanxing could only think of this possibility. But why? Why did he shatter his own godly bones for no reason? It should be known that the toughness of Ling Han's godly bones had already reached the level of level 4 godly metal. It could be said that he could pass through the heavenly tribulation while lying down. This is to refine it and to steal. Her heart skipped a beat, and then she was shocked. Just what kind of terrifying defensive power would it reach if it were to be upgraded one more step? Of course, even a defense that was as strong as level 5 godly metal would not be able to withstand a single blow from her. However, it could be deduced from this that the higher Ling Han's cultivation level was, the higher his defenses would also be, and it would always remain a little higher than his cultivation level. That would be terrifying. How could this man from a small world possess such astonishing power? Could it be that he also came from an ancient divine race? Fuck! The notionless saint exclaimed in astonishment. His cultivation level was naturally higher than Empress Luanxing's, and he had lived longer. However, he had never heard of such a terrifying physique before. He had originally thought that Ling Han's physique was strong because he had eaten some peerless treasure, and that it was a one-time thing. But now, it seemed that it could actually increase along with his cultivation level. Does this brat also come from a powerful clan? Notionless Saint felt like he was dreaming. The appearance of someone with the bloodline of the 9 serpent race was already extremely rare. They were known as the primordial celestial race, and they had long since ceased to exist in the god world. But with Ling Han's monstrous talent, he definitely wouldn't lose to them. Another descendant of the ancient divine clan. After the initial shock, the notionless saint was overjoyed. If the 2 ancient divine clans were to mate, what kind of heaven-defying foundation would their offspring possess? This had never happened even in the ancient times because there were simply too few ancient races, so few that it was pitiful. Even in the ancient times, when there were still a few ancient races that were as rare as phoenix feathers and unicorn horns, there had never been a marriage alliance. "I'm really looking forward to it," he murmured. Ling Han shattered his godly bones and accepted the tempering of the heavenly tribulation. The indestructible heaven scroll continued to circulate, advancing towards a higher cultivation level. To Ling Han, enduring the heavenly tribulation was a small matter. Tempering his godly bones was the most important matter. He had nothing to do anyway, so he also summoned the divine demon sword. Since this thing could swallow godly metal to improve its quality, it should also have some benefits if it was refined by the heavenly tribulation, right? Half a day passed by very quickly. Ling Han reconstructed his godly bones and circulated a drop of indestructible true fluid. Even though he was in the air, the spiritual chi of heaven and earth was still drawn toward him, consolidating his foundation. In addition, there was also a rich life essence here, so his vitality was naturally restored. Moreover, his blood and chi were rising, showing his vigorous vitality. Ling Han landed on the ground and took out a new set of clothes to change into. Under the heavenly tribulation, his clothes had naturally turned into ashes. He looked up at the sky, frowning. As the heavenly tribulation raged, the space around him grew larger and larger, creating enough space for him to transcend the tribulation, making it so that the heavenly tribulation could not destroy it. As expected of the means of a sage, it was beyond his imagination. "Damn brat, who would have thought that you would make my eyes light up even more?" The notionless saint laughed heartily and said, "The toughness of your physique should have reached the level of level 5 godly metal now, right?" Ling Han knew that he could not hide this from the eyes of a saint, even though this saint had died long ago, and only a remnant of his soul was left. He carefully sensed his new physique and said, "Probably not. It's just far superior to level 4 godly metal, but still some distance away from level 5. Ling Han would probably have to form 5 mountains and rivers, and endure another heavenly tribulation before his godly bones could reach the level of level 5 godly metal. Hurry up and give birth to a disciple for me," the notionless saint said excitedly. "I can't be bothered with you." Ling Han sat down in a cross-legged position and continued to cultivate. Although the notionless saint still possessed astonishing power, strength alone was useless when it came to things like giving birth. He humphed and said, "Do you want to stay here forever?" "This place is not bad," Ling Han said with a smile. "The life essence here is abundant, and it's perfect for cultivation. He naturally would not weaken his aura. Let's wait and see," the notionless saint angrily said. Time passed by very quickly. 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 1 year. Ling Han and Ling Han had already been trapped for a whole year. though this was practically negligible for immortals. When they thought that this kind of life could possibly last for another 10 years, 100 years, or even 1,000 years, they could not accept it. Ling Han's cultivation level had already soared to the peak stage of the consummate level of the mountain river tier. Next, he would either form 5 mountains and rivers and reach the true pinnacle of the mountain river tier, or attempt to break through to the sun-moon tier and advance to a brand new cultivation level. However, the notionless saint's patience was also about to run out. He once again spoke through the stone tablet, saying, "My time is limited. You forced my hand. Oi oi oi. You're not trying to kill us, are you? Also, how can your time be limited? Didn't you already die?" Ling Han said with a chuckle. "Humph. I've refined my own divine sense, so how can it last for too long?" The notionless saint said coldly, "Since you're not willing to take the initiative, then I'll let this little girl take the initiative." Boom! Empress Luanxing's aura suddenly became incredibly terrifying. In this instant, she had recovered her heavenly body tier cultivation level. However, Ling Han didn't think that this was good news. On the contrary, the notionless saint had already said such words, so he definitely didn't have good intentions. Empress Luanxing's appearance was once again enveloped by the aura of primal chaos. Her figure also became faintly discernible, yet it was still perfect and captivating. She raised her head to look at Ling Han. Although he couldn't see her bright eyes, Ling Han felt as if he had been targeted by a wolf. This wasn't the feeling of a hungry wolf targeting a rabbit. Rather, it was the feeling of a female wolf in heat targeting a male wolf. "Old pervert, what did you do?" Ling Han asked in shock. I merely made this little girl enter her heat," the notionless saint said with a chuckle. "Alright, I'm leaving. I won't disturb you anymore." "Old bastard, stand up." Hung. Ling Han hadn't even finished speaking when Empress Luanxing had already pounced over and wrapped her arms around him. Like a female leopard in heat, she pressed down on him tightly and was about to push him down. No, it was more like a beautiful snake that had wrapped itself around him. "Oi, I've already restrained myself. Can't you do the same?" Ling Han said as he pushed Empress Luanxing with all his might. However, even if he had reached the consummate level of the mountain river tier, so what? How could he be a match for a heavenly body tier elite? Empress Luanxing's soft murmur was meaningless, yet it was filled with temptation, causing Ling Han's entire body to heat up. She was a super seductive beauty that could drive men crazy with a single look. Even Shui Yinyu paled in comparison to her. She was like a country bumpkin, being wrapped around by such a beautiful woman, who was actively asking to be pushed down. Who could refuse? Ling Han gritted his teeth. Although he had once fantasized about capturing this empress and spanking her bottom when he reached great heights in his cultivation, it was only a fantasy, after all. Taking advantage of others while they were down wasn't what a real man would do. Empress Luanxing was already kissing Ling Han. She continuously searched for his lips, and when she couldn't find them, she kissed him randomly. Ling Han really wanted to slap himself. He was being wrapped around by such an exquisite beauty, yet he was actually thinking about how to escape? Was he being a fool? With a rip, a large piece of his clothes was torn off, and his weapon was almost exposed. Would little Han be pushed down by the Empress? Chapter 1130. Oh, too unreserved. You're the Empress, so how can your willpower be so weak? Ling Han's heart thumped wildly. This was a stunning beauty that could make any man fall head over heels for her with a single gaze or figure. He hadn't even seen her face in the past, yet the figure of this Empress would still surface in his heart from time to time. But now this beauty had taken the initiative to throw herself into his arms, and even allowed him to see her true appearance. What kind of temptation was this? Ling Han resisted, but his hands were involuntarily free, and they once again pressed down on those two towering peaks. Fuck, why did I reach there? It had to be because they were too big, and the target was too obvious, so he unconsciously reached for them. So big, so firm, so soft and so bouncy. Ling Han swallowed with difficulty. This time he finally had a clear feeling. He hurriedly shook his head. Now was not the time to think about such things. Rip, the Empress couldn't hold herself back anymore, and began to tear at his clothes again. Fuck. Ling Han cursed in his mind. His figure flashed. Yet he had already entered into the Black Tower. Empress Luanxing instantly hugged empty air, a hint of confusion flashing across her eyes. Under the control of her desire, her reaction was indeed much slower. Huh. Notionless Saint's voice suddenly sounded, and he said, "Spatial God Tool, that's not right. Even if you hide in a spatial God Tool, the God Tool itself shouldn't disappear." As expected, this old pervert hadn't left. In the Black Tower, Ling Han grumbled. Then he wanted nothing more than to slap himself. A stunning beauty had taken the initiative to throw herself into his arms, and was about to push him down, yet he had actually hidden into the Black Tower? Did he have any thoughts about Empress Luanxing? Ling Han couldn't help but admit that this empress's charm had already surpassed everything. Even he was moved, yet he had actually run away so pretentiously. Just thinking about it made him feel like he was too much of a hypocrite. He clearly had thoughts, yet he was pretending to be a saint. I'm not pretending to be a saint, but if I use this kind of method to obtain her, it will leave me with guilt and regret in my heart. Moreover, I want to pursue the pinnacle of martial art. If there is a weakness in my heart, it will definitely be affected when I comprehend the heavenly Tao in the future. Perhaps it will become a fatal blow to me. My philosophy is to have a clear conscience. As a person, there must be an uncrossable principle. When he thought of this, his heart calmed down. This was also the reason why he had not hesitated to expose the existence of the Black Tower to Empress Luanxie. You can tell that person that I have a way to let him reincarnate. Small Tower suddenly appeared beside him and said. Ling Han stared blankly for a moment. Then he was so angry that he almost jumped up. Why didn't you say so earlier? He had been locked up for nearly 2 years. Firstly, you didn't ask, and secondly, you didn't enter into the Black Tower. I thought that you were very happy with that empress, and didn't want to leave, Small Tower said calmly, extremely proud. This guy Ling Han muttered in his mind. However, he couldn't help but reflect on himself. He had been living very obediently these past 2 years. Was it because of Empress Luanxing's charm that he was content with the status quo? When he thought of this, he couldn't help but be shocked. The allure of this empress was too great, causing him to be unknowingly influenced. That old pervert only has a remnant soul left, and he's courting death. Can you save him? Ling Han turned his thoughts back to the present. Yes. Small Tower had always been concise with its words. The reincarnation tree is enough to keep his remnant soul intact, and when you open the next level of the Black Tower, you can gather the power of the 5 elements, and forge a 5-element body. 5-element body? That sounds very awesome, Ling Han said. Small Tower continued. Tell him that the 5-element body seizes heaven's good fortune, and will increase the frequency of the immortal's tribulation by 10-fold. What immortal's tribulation? Ling Han asked. Do I have a duty to answer your question? Small Tower countered, and then answered its own question. No, don't waste my precious time. I have to continue repairing the Black Tower. If it wasn't for the fact that I need you to continue to become stronger, I wouldn't even bother to come out. Sigh, having a master like this is really troublesome. I have to do everything. As it said this, it slowly became transparent, and then disappeared. Fuck. Have you ever treated me as your master? Ling Han retorted. He organized his thoughts. Xiao. His figure flashed again, and he left the Black Tower. An enchanting moan traveled over, and he was immediately wrapped tightly around by Empress Luanxing. Just then, this empress had only hugged him, and hadn't used any divine patterns. In other words, she had only used her martial art consciousness to trap him, allowing him to enter the Black Tower. This time, however, the divine patterns intertwined, and Ling Han was truly trapped. He hurriedly shouted, Old pervert, don't you want to take revenge yourself and cultivate back to the Genesis tier? You've done it. I also have an astonishing secret that can help you form a 5-element body. However, the weakness is that the frequency of the immortal's tribulation will increase 10-fold. What? Notionless Saint's voice was filled with astonishment. Brat, is what you said true? He was incredibly excited. If he could take revenge with his own hands, if he could survive, how could he be willing to let the fruits of his cultivation go up in smoke? Of course it's true. Remove the spell on her first, Ling Han called out. Hey, you really are a strange person, Notionless Saint commented. The Notionless Saint commented, alright, I'd like to hear what you have in mind. Pa. Empress Luanxing suddenly stopped moving. However, she had also lost all of her strength, and she instantly collapsed into Ling Han's arms. Just then, Empress Luanxing had taken the initiative, and Ling Han was as fearful as a snake or scorpion. Now that she had fallen silent, however, he could clearly feel how soft, how hot, and how bouncy this Empress's body was. His mouth instantly went dry, and he felt an urge to turn into a beast. This really proved the saying, a wife was inferior to a concubine was inferior to a mistress, and a mistress was inferior to a mistress. She had taken the initiative to throw herself into his arms, and he had rejected her. Now that it was over, his heart was itching. Ling Han hurriedly took a deep breath, and with great difficulty, he set Empress Luanxing aside. Then he said, "Old pervert, I'm going to take you somewhere. Don't resist." "Nonsense, I can create spatial god tools myself, so I naturally know this principle," Notionless Saint said. "However, my soul has been suppressed underground this entire time. And I've been suppressed by the power of the heavens. Once it's exposed, it'll either fuse into someone else's body or dissipate. It's impossible for it to return. So if you're lying to me, I'll definitely kill you before I dissipate." Ling Han waved his hands and said, don't worry, I won't give you a reason to kill me. Fine, then I'll come out." Notionless Saint wasn't one to beat around the bush either. The stone pillar immediately lit up, and a ball of white light appeared. Ling Han waved his divine sense, and this ball of light wrapped around it. Xiao. He brought it with him into the Black Tower. Chapter 1132. Ever since Ling Han assaulted her breasts, Empress Luan naturally regarded Ling Han as a lowly and shameless scoundrel, but after 2 years of interaction, Ling Han's behavior could practically be described as noble. Reining in the horse at the brink of the precipice required great willpower and determination, and revealing the secret that he possessed a precious treasure for this reason. This kind of personality was practically blinding. Should she kill Ling Han or not? She definitely couldn't kill him. That would be repaying kindness with enmity. Empress Luanxing was even a little glad that the person in the end was Ling Han. Otherwise, if it had been another man, she would definitely have lost her chastity by now. When she thought that she might have lost her chastity to a complete stranger, she felt a lingering fear and shivered. Moreover, in order to obtain a disciple, the Notionless Saint would definitely make her lose her chastity more than once, which was even more terrifying. From this point of view, Ling Han was practically her great benefactor, and her kindness was so great that she couldn't repay him in this lifetime. But the problem was, these images of her kissing and hugging him were also deeply imprinted in her mind, and whenever she thought of them in the future, how could she feel at ease? She had a heavy responsibility, and her heart was set on martial art, so she could only become the strongest in the world. There was a flaw in this heart of martial art, and it might affect her progress, but what should she do? Could her heart not be in chaos? In the end, she only hummed softly, which could be considered as saying, "I understand." Ling Han somewhat understood her difficulties, but he wasn't a woman after all, and he definitely wasn't Empress Luanxing, so he probably understood less than 1%. He raised his voice and said, "Your Majesty, let's pretend that these past few days never happened, how about it?" Hearing him say this, Empress Luanxing was both angry and annoyed. This could only be said by her. "You touched me, kissed me, hugged me in just one sentence and will pretend that nothing happened?" If Ling Han knew about this, he would definitely cry injustice. Actually, it was this empress who touched him, kissed him and hugged him, all right? If it wasn't for his strong willpower, he might have been pushed down by her in the end. Heartbreaker, Empress Luanxing said in her mind. However, she immediately spat out haughtily. How could this man be worthy of becoming her husband? She humphed and said, "Could it be that you still want to remember me? What kind of thoughts do you have about me?" "Ah, not cute at all, too arrogant." Ling Han sighed in his heart, but being beautiful meant that one could be willful. Although he was stabbed by her, he couldn't feel any disgust towards her. He shook his head inwardly. He had to keep a distance from this troublemaker. Otherwise, he might really lose his sense of direction. The man and woman each had their own thoughts, and neither of them said anything else. Under the Notionless Saint's control, a starship appeared in the interstellar burial mound. Back then, even though Notionless Saint had been severely injured and even had his saint essence stolen, he was still a saint after all. Before he died, he had still set up all kinds of means such as hiding a starship here. It was prepared for his future disciple. Now, however, he could live a second life on his own. This naturally benefited Ling Han and Empress Luanxing. This was a small starship, and it was only equipped with a certain defensive formation to deal with groups of meteors in the galaxy or spatial black holes that suddenly appeared. However, it didn't have any offensive abilities. After all, it was too small, so it couldn't be inscribed with so many formations. It couldn't be helped. After all, this had been prepared by Notionless Saint before he died. How could he have so much time to perfect it? After he obtained the starship, he hid in the Black Tower. Right now, he was in a pure divine sense state, and he had refined his own saintly might. Thus, it was impossible for him to exist alone for a long time. He had to rely on external objects, such as the reincarnation tree. Not only could this allow him to continue living, but it could also allow him to live a better life. Such a godly object would take 12 trillion years to grow, so how could it not be a treasure? In the interstellar burial mound, he could easily suppress heavenly body tier elites by relying on the various means he had set up when he was alive. In fact, he could even suppress low-level eternal river tier elites. However, after leaving the interstellar burial mound, Notionless Saint would only be a remnant soul. Moreover, this was a remnant soul that had refined his own saintly might, so he posed no threat at all. In other words, apart from being able to give some advice to Ling Han, he was completely useless. In the starship, Ling Han and Empress Luanxing were both seated. This starship only had a single cabin, and there weren't any lounges or anything like that. However, the cabin was definitely much larger than the cloud-piercing shuttle, and it seemed to be able to accommodate 10 people at the same time. The atmosphere was a little strange, and neither of them spoke. However, because they were in the same small cabin, Ling Han could smell the faint fragrance emanating from Empress Luanxing's body. This caused his heart to race. He had seen Empress Luanxing's true appearance, and she had even taken the initiative to throw herself into his arms. They had even had intimate contact with each other. This allowed him to have too much room for imagination. Don't let your imagination run wild, Empress Luanxing suddenly reprimanded. Ling Han rolled his eyes. Could it be that you know what I'm thinking? He smiled faintly and said, "Fine, I won't." "You're still thinking," Empress Luanxing rebuked. "Is that so?" Ling Han laughed loudly. After seeing the seductive side of Empress Luanxing, it was very difficult for him to feel reverence for her again. His only regret was that this Empress Luanxing was mighty, seductive, pure, and exquisite. She possessed all kinds of different styles, but she just didn't have the cuteness of a little girl. If she could act coquettishly towards him, he would probably be completely unable to control himself even with his self-control. Empress Luanxing was seething with anger. This man actually didn't have the slightest bit of reverence for her. It was the opposite. She was fuming, and had an urge to suppress Ling Han. However, she was immediately astonished. A few words from a despicable man could actually mess up her state of mind. It's over. Chapter 1133. The Majestic Heaven Sect was very powerful. Though it had no intention of competing, with an Eternal River tier elite overseeing it, it could not give face to anyone. It could be said that even if Empress Luanxing personally appeared and wanted to send someone into the Majestic Heaven Sect, the Majestic Heaven Sect could easily say no. What more when the relationship between Ling Han and the Empress was not that good. Because Li Weiwei and Ji Yun had previously refined mountain river stones, they could be considered geniuses with their age and cultivation, so they were also accepted into the Majestic Heaven Sect as ordinary disciples. In the imperial capital, there was almost no friend of Ling Han. Ling Han began to think about what he should do next. "Where is Ling Han?" A dignified voice came from outside. This was Chu Chioshua, the commander of the Imperial Guards. Ling Han was astonished. This person had always only obeyed the orders of Empress Luanxing alone, and she had come here. In other words, Empress Luanxing had issued a decree. What a grand display! Sua Huan, who had hugged him in the past, had now sent a servant to deliver a message. He walked out and saw Chu Choshua dressed in armor. She exuded might amidst her beauty. What a flower of the army! Unfortunately, such a beautiful flower could be plucked at will by Empress Luanxing. There had never been any rumors that she liked men. She was most likely enchanted by the Empress, and had even forgotten that she was a woman. Greetings, Commander. Ling Han clasped his hands in greeting. They were both military officials of the Empire, so as long as Chu Choshua did not take it seriously, he indeed did not need to kneel. Chu Choshua looked at Ling Han strangely. Such an ordinary man was worth the Empress issuing a decree for him twice. The first time was fine. The Empress wanted to use the matter of Ling Han to intimidate the nobles of the Empire and make them restrain themselves. But this time it was completely personal. When did he become related to the Empress? No matter how Chu Choshua thought about it, she could not have guessed that the Empress had been with Ling Han day and night in these 2 years that she had disappeared, and had even had relatively intimate skin contact. Otherwise she would probably go crazy. His Majesty wants me to give you something. She handed over a letter and said, "This is a letter that His Majesty has written to the 9th King, instructing you to deliver it to the 9th King. He also says that if the 9th King is willing, she can take you as her follower, and you can cultivate together with her in the majestic heaven sect." Ling Han was a little surprised and didn't extend his hand to receive the letter. Only when Chu Choshua coughed heavily did he come back to his senses and receive the letter. "I'm leaving." Chu Choshua stared deeply at Ling Han before turning to leave. She was extremely puzzled. Why did the Empress want Ling Han to deliver the letter, and furthermore, wanted her to personally make the trip? Ling Han was astonished because he knew that the 9th King had also been chosen by the majestic heaven sect, and had long since gone to the flying cloud planet. Moreover, this unreliable 9th King had actually been listed as a seed. Although Empress Luanxing had asked him to deliver a letter, it was no different from opening a backdoor for him, allowing him to enter the majestic heaven sect as a follower of the 9th King. In the majestic heaven sect, only seeds could take followers and cultivate in the sect. Although followers couldn't receive the resources of the sect to nurture them, they could follow their master and listen to the great elites explain the great Tao. In fact, Venerable Trinity would occasionally appear and give pointers to the seeds. Thus, although followers only had the status of servants, who knew how many prodigies would break their heads to fight for a spot like this? Empress Luanxing didn't have enough face to make the majestic heaven sect make an exception and take Ling Han as a disciple, but she used her own method to open another door for Ling Han. Tisk Brother Lai's charm is really great. Even a delicate flower like the Empress has been charmed by Brother, Ling Han said very narcissistically. Accept or not? Ling Han considered for a moment and then decided to accept. His 3 brothers, disciple, and lovers were all in the majestic heaven sect. Moreover, his 2 enemies Zhaoluan and Shaoyuan had also gone there. If he stayed in the imperial capital, what else could he do apart from teasing the Empress? But was the Empress easy to tease? Ling Han made some preparations, and sold all the alchemical pills he had, exchanging them for a large number of true origin stones. Then, he bought a lot of other materials. He couldn't give up on alchemy. The essence of a demonic master was almost exhausted, and he couldn't possibly maintain such a high speed of improvement. He had to return to the old path of using alchemy to nourish his cultivation. Half a month later, Ling Han first went to visit Old Man Su, and then left the joint peace planet. He used Notionless Saint's starship as his vehicle, and headed for the flying cloud planet. Why couldn't the cloud-piercing shuttle work? It wasn't just a problem of defensive formations. There was also something even more important: galactic coordinates. In the boundless universe there was no up, down, left, or right. Did you know where to go? The galactic coordinates were the key to guidance, but this could only be effective in a star map, and a star map needed a very large formation to be unfolded. Thus, how could a small shuttle like the cloud-piercing shuttle carry it? If he used the cloud-piercing shuttle to head for the flying cloud planet, the only result would be that Ling Han would get lost in the galaxy. If he was lucky, He would arrive at an unfamiliar planet after a few hundred or a few thousand years. The prerequisite was that he had enough true origin stones. Otherwise, the cloud-piercing shuttle would lose its power source, and it would be no different from an ordinary shuttle. Ling Han steered the starship. This didn't require any technique. It was just a formation. He only needed to input the galactic coordinates, and with the addition of true origin stones it would automatically fly. Only when there was an unexpected situation, such as an attack from a meteorite or an explosion of a planet, would he need to manually steer the starship away from its predetermined course. He entered the boundless galaxy, and most of his time was spent comprehending under the reincarnation tree. He would occasionally come out to check if there were any unexpected situations. The journey from the joint peace planet to the flying cloud planet would take as long as 3 months. Ling Han sat under the reincarnation tree. Notionless Saint was currently imparting martial art to Qin Yi, Yuan Changhe, and the others. He really had nothing to do at this moment. He was only left with a remnant soul, and he couldn't cultivate. Thus he could only pass the time like this. He listened from the side. After all, it was a saint imparting Tao. Compared to this, what was the majestic heaven sect? If he spread the news that there was a saint imparting martial art to him in the Black Tower, even eternal river tier grade elites like Venerable Trinity would beg to enter, to say nothing of heavenly body tier elites. The great Tao couldn't be described with words. However, Notionless Saint had once been a supreme elite, so he naturally knew how to guide them. For example, black holes couldn't be seen. However, the light and celestial bodies that they absorbed could prove their existence. Notionless Saint was also like this. Through his explanations, which were both profound and simple, Qin Yi and the others were able to comprehend many things. One had to realize that they were under the reincarnation tree. If they couldn't comprehend one sentence from you in a day, what would they do in a year or even 10 years? Brat, even if my main body obtains a true body in the future, I'll still have to cultivate here. This is practically a supreme treasure land, Notionless Saint said. Cultivating under the reincarnation tree for a day was equivalent to cultivating for a year. Even saints would be tempted. Sure, Ling Han said with a nod. If Notionless Saint could return to his position as a saint, he would have gained a powerful lackey. Even if he was only a small saint, it would still be impressive. The Azura Demon Emperor became more and more respectful. Master was really too awesome. He had managed to recruit a saint. In the netherworld, a saint would be equivalent to a demon master. He couldn't help but want to wag his tail. However, he was in human form now, so there was no tail for him to wag. This made him feel very displeased. He was actually not allowed to be a dog anymore. This was too much of a bully. Chapter 1134. The starship silently sailed through the universe. It was quiet and peaceful. Suddenly a streak of sword light streaked past. It was incomparably resplendent, and it was condensed with terrifying divine patterns. In an instant, it illuminated the nearby starry sky, and even the distant sun paled in comparison. As the sword swept past, the divine chains of laws floated and rippled. Bam! Without any suspense, the starship was instantly sliced into pieces. This was a small starship, so its defenses could only reach the peak stage of the sun-moon tier at most. And that strike just then was shockingly at the heavenly body tier. A human figure appeared. His entire body was shrouded in a chaotic aura. It was impossible to tell whether he was a man or a woman, tall or short. He stood in the starry sky, carefully observing. He seemed to be worried, and after checking every piece of the starship and confirming that there was not a single trace of life on them, he waved his hand, summoned a small starship and steered it away. The ripples in the starry sky calmed down and returned to a deathly stillness. A day later, the small starship appeared again, and after circling around the area, it departed. How careful, Ling Han said in a low voice from within the Black Tower. When the starship was attacked, he just so happened to be inside the Black Tower, so he didn't even need to dodge. After he discovered that this sneak attacker was extremely meticulous, he didn't rush to leave. Instead, he patiently waited here. As expected, the other party came back to attack. Such thoughts were terrifying. Brat, it seems like you've offended a lot of people, Notionless Saint said. He had already heard Ling Han mention the incident where the starship had been attacked. It's not seems, it's true. Ling Han smiled. However, it won't be long before I'll be able to come back and find those who want to harm me, and make them suffer the consequences of their own actions. This was a very bold claim, but Notionless Saint was unable to refute it. With a precious treasure like the reincarnation tree, Ling Han indeed had the right to be arrogant. Didn't he see that even he was tempted and wanted to comprehend Tao under this tree? Ling Han was trying to guess the identity of the attacker. Could be the Dark Night Hall or it could be someone else. However, there were only so many heavenly body tier elites on Joint Peace Planet. As long as he had enough power, he could definitely find these people and identify their auras, and he would be able to confirm their identities. Every expert had their own unique aura that was extremely difficult to imitate. But how do we get to the Flying Cloud Planet now? Ling Han was in a difficult position. After losing the galactic coordinates, it was as if he had entered a huge maze. Moreover, there was no improvement at all. He could only blindly guess. The price was naturally time. Perhaps it would be decades or centuries later when he really had to set foot on the Flying Cloud Planet. No matter what, I'll have to try my luck. The starship has already been flying for over 2 months, and it's not too far away from the Flying Cloud Planet. There should be a chance. Ling Han brought out the cloud-piercing shuttle, did his best to determine the direction, and then began to navigate through space. This time he was really walking around blindly. 1 month later, the Flying Cloud Planet was still out of reach. They had no idea where it was. Ling Han sighed repeatedly. He had not been idle during this month, and added with the 2 months before this, he had spent most of his time comprehending Tao under the reincarnation tree, accumulating his comprehension and opening up his 5th mountain and river. By now, his comprehension was already extremely deep, but when it came to the problem of finding the Flying Cloud Planet, he seemed to have reached a dead end. Another half a month passed, and his comprehension was already sufficient. After all, he still had the Notionless Saint by his side to provide him with reference, and he also had the support of the Demon Master's essence energy. He's going to break through. This wasn't the Sun-Moon tier, but rather the pinnacle of the Mountain-River tier. Soon? Not at all. It should be known that Ling Han possessed the reincarnation tree. Counting from the time he had left the large galactic tomb, he had already comprehended for over 100 years. If he still could not comprehend the secret of the 5th mountain river, then it would be impossible for him to do so in the future. Ling Han put away the cloud-piercing shuttle and stood proudly in the starry sky. Hong Long Long. The heavenly tribulation arrived as promised. This was the most pervasive power in the world, and nothing could stop the arrival of the heavenly tribulation. Ling Han sighed. Only a little more than a year had passed, and he was about to experience another hellish torture. Godly bones shatter. He voluntarily shattered his godly bones, and tempered them under the heavenly tribulation. There seemed to be only a difference of 1 level between level 4 godly metal and level 5 godly metal, but even a 9-star genius at the peak stage of the Mountain River tier could not match a Sun Moon tier who had just broken through. There was also a chasm between level 4 godly metal and level 5 godly metal. Previously, Ling Han could only be considered to have a physique that was above level 4 and below level 5. Only after experiencing such tempering would he be able to reach the level of the Mountain River tier. He nodded internally. If he did not cultivate to the pinnacle of the 5 great cultivation levels, his physique would not be able to reach the strongest level in this world. Just thinking about it was too terrifying. Even if he was completely weak, even a Saint King would not be able to do anything to him. However, he was not the one who had created the indestructible Heaven Scroll. Even if he was the second person in this world to cultivate this cultivation technique, what about the first person? That elite had definitely died. And that was why the Black Tower was looking for a new master. The first person had definitely cultivated the indestructible Heaven Scroll to the pinnacle, but he had still died. This meant that the pinnacle of the indestructible Heaven Scroll was not the pinnacle of martial art, and that was why there was a stronger power that could shatter it. Ling Han collected his distracting thoughts. He was still very far away from the pinnacle of martial art, so there was no need to consider such a thing. All the godly bones in his body had been shattered, and the smaller the particles, the more completely they had been tempered by the heavenly tribulation. They were all level 5 godly metal, but there would definitely be differences. Just like how the low extreme was divided into early stage, middle stage, late stage, and peak stage. Either he did not do it, or he did it to the best of his ability. Hung long long. Thunder rumbled in the void. The regulations of heaven and earth in the galaxy were very weak, and mountain river tier cultivators could fly, and space was also very easily damaged. As the 30,000-meter-long lightning wreaked havoc, it was as if this place had become a sea of lightning, incredibly dazzling. Even Ling Han felt that the heavenly tribulation this time was different. It was much more powerful than before. 5 Mountain River, the true pinnacle, and was not tolerated by the heavens. Half a day later, the heavenly tribulation disappeared, and everything returned to normal. Meanwhile, Ling Han stood quietly, experiencing it. Unlike before, his power had not skyrocketed, but rather had opened a door that allowed him to further increase his power, soaring to the height of 7 stars, 8 stars, 9 stars, and even 10 stars. But exactly how many stars he could reach would depend on his natural talent and comprehension ability, as well as how far he could cultivate the 5th Mountain River. In the distance, a faint light flickered, and he saw a starship sailing straight over. Ling Han subconsciously wanted to hide in the Black Tower, but he immediately came to his senses. This was not the sneak attacker from before, but rather his savior. It was probably because the commotion caused by the heavenly tribulation had been too great, and had attracted this starship, which had purposely turned around to come over. Alright, now he finally did not have to run around randomly in the galaxy. Ling Han broke into a smile. Good things really came one after another. He drew out an appearance disguise pill and swallowed it. Chapter 1136. Brat, didn't you hear us tell you to scram? The 4 men said with a cold humph. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, You're not powerful, but you sure put on a show. What? A man walked over and asked, Do you know who our young master is? Oh, who? Ling Han asked with a smile. He really didn't care. Zhang Tong, young master Tong. The man said proudly as if he were Zhang Tong. Ling Han nodded and said, So you're the lackeys of lackeys, the so-called 2 lackeys? Why were you? The man pointed at Ling Han in anger, and said, Are you tired of living? Oh, so this is how the majestic heaven sect treats its guests? Ling Han asked. Wrong, we're not disciples of the majestic heaven sect, so we're not restricted by the sect's rules, the man said sinisterly. He then snapped his fingers and said, Brothers, let's teach this guy a lesson he won't forget. The other 3 men also stepped forward, and they all stared at Ling Han like hungry wolves staring at a little rabbit. After forming 5 mountains and rivers, Ling Han's aura was restrained, and his entire being was as deep as the sea. It was difficult to tell how powerful he was. Meanwhile, he had already broken through to the pinnacle of the mountain river tier a month ago. Now his power had reached 7 stars. 7 stars above the peak stage of the mountain river tier. What kind of concept was this? He glanced at Zhang Tong and said, Your lackeys are barking, and you're not going to control them? Zhang Tong's expression changed, and he said coldly, Beat all his teeth out. He hadn't taken Ling Han seriously in the first place. He couldn't even be bothered to look at such a minor character. So what if he was arrogant? Why couldn't the follower of Lord Yang Hao be arrogant? One had to know that Venerable Trinity was interested in taking Yang Hao as his personal disciple. Once Yang Hao became the personal disciple of an eternal river tier elite, so what if he could do whatever he wanted in the majestic heaven sect? Hee. The 4 lackeys chuckled coldly. Zhang Tong was a domineering person, and they were used to being arrogant as well. They didn't know what restraint was. The people nearby hurriedly retreated, afraid that they would be involved in the battle. That was Zhang Tong, so who would dare to meddle in his business? Moreover, they weren't disciples of the majestic heaven sect, so what right did they have to meddle in this matter? You're going too far. At that moment, a green-clothed woman leapt out from the crowd. You're just a bunch of lackeys. How dare you be so arrogant? Zhang Tong glanced at her, and he couldn't help but reveal a stunned expression. This was actually a peerless beauty. Her black hair was like a waterfall. Her skin was whiter than snow, and her facial features were incomparably exquisite, especially her pair of big eyes, which seemed to be able to speak, filled with the craftiness of a young girl. His heart skipped a beat as he asked, "Miss, how should I address you? Why do you care who I am? I just don't like bullies like you," the green-clothed beauty said with her head held high like a proud swan. "Junior sister." Another man squeezed out. He was tall and shockingly burly, but he didn't seem domineering. Instead, he seemed a little timid. He nodded and bowed to Zhang Tong and the 4 lackeys as he said, my apologies, my apologies. This is my junior sister. She speaks and acts on impulse. Please don't blame her, please don't blame her." Everyone inwardly shook their heads when they saw this. This pair of senior brother and junior sister really had extreme personalities. One hated evil while the other was a coward. Zhang Tong sneered and said, "You want to stay out of this matter with just a few apologies?" Young Master Zhang, what do you want?" asked the burly man. "Since you offended me, you naturally have to properly apologize. How about this? Let's go to the distant Heaven restaurant to have a drink and chat." Zhang Tong stared at the green-clothed beauty, his heart itching. Everyone naturally understood. He was a man after all. Who wouldn't understand the hidden meaning behind his words? Zhang Tong just wanted to have sex with her. The burly man hesitated. "Senior brother, he's just a lackey. Why should we be afraid of him?" said the green-clothed beauty angrily. "Junior sister, how many times do I have to tell you not to cause trouble? Don't cause trouble." The burly man sighed. But just when everyone thought he was going to compromise, he boldly assumed an offensive stance and said, "No one can humiliate my junior sister." At this moment he was truly awe-inspiring. He didn't have the slightest bit of cowardice left. Zhang Tong couldn't help but laugh loudly. "So it's just an idiot. Capture him." He pointed at the burly man. He believed that as long as he could capture this person, the green-clothed beauty would definitely be at his mercy. The 4 lackeys naturally couldn't be bothered to deal with Ling Han anymore. Instead, they pounced on the burly man like wolves and tigers. Although the burly man had previously looked like he was afraid of trouble, when he really had no way out, he revealed his ferocious side. He raised his fists and slammed them together. Instantly, a terrifying shockwave rippled out. His fists swelled up. Previously, they had only been the size of bowls. Although they were big, they were still within the normal range. But now they were at least 3 times the size of his head. Furthermore, they had turned a steely green color and flashed with a metallic luster. Wang! His arms also began to undulate like waves. They continuously flowed from his hands to his shoulders. Every time they undulated, a divine pattern would appear on his fists, making them even more powerful. What kind of martial technique is this? It's pretty interesting. Ling Han watched from the side. He wasn't in a hurry to interfere. Xiu! The 4 lackeys had already pounced on the burly man, and they all attacked. Pung 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 pung. The burly man's fists were incredibly fast, and he actually launched 4 punches in an instant. These punches landed on each of the 4 lackeys. His whole body was like a spring that was filled with elasticity. Thus, after one punch, he could borrow the rebound force to quickly launch a second punch. Ling Han watched carefully. Every time he launched a punch, a divine pattern on the burly man's fists would disappear, and his battle prowess would decrease slightly. Interesting. The power of one's fists would decrease with the number of punches he launched, but the power of one's fists would increase again after a slight pause. His battle prowess fluctuated. The burly man was at the late stage of the low extreme of the mountain river tier, and 3 of the 4 lackeys were at the same cultivation level as him. The last one was even stronger, having reached the peak stage of the low extreme. Thus, the burly man's first punch was always aimed at the lackey at the peak stage of the low extreme. This was his most powerful attack. After battling for a while, not only did the spectators understand the situation, but even the 4 lackeys also came to a realization. Attack faster. Don't give him the chance to recover the power of his fists. The attacks of the 4 lackeys became more and more urgent, forcing the burly man to launch as many punches as possible. In this way, even if the divine patterns on his fists would automatically recover, The speed of recovery was far slower than the speed of depletion. Thus, the power of his attacks naturally decreased sharply. I won't allow you to bully my senior brother. The green-robed beauty unsheathed her sword. Her expression filled with fury. Chapter 1137. Miss, we're just sparring, so there's no need to make such a big fuss, Zhang Tong said with a smile. He pressed down with his hand, and the green-robed beauty trembled as if she were under heavy pressure. She almost couldn't even stand properly. Zhang Tong was at the consummate level of the mountain river tier, while the green-robed beauty was only at the early stage of the low extreme. The gap between them was like the gap between heaven and earth. Junior sister, the burly man exclaimed in shock. However, the 4 lackeys had already found a way to deal with him, so how could he save the green-robed beauty? Is this really the majestic heaven sect? How can they be so arrogant? Someone asked in a low voice. There's nothing we can do. We're not disciples of the majestic heaven sect, so they'll only care about internal matters. Sai, I really can't stay here anymore. Say that brat is the most despicable one. He was the one who caused all this trouble, yet he's acting like nothing happened. That's right, this guy is despicable. A great many people turned their attention to Ling Han. They felt that this guy was really ungrateful. Ling Han had clearly stepped forward for his sake, but now this guy just patted his behind and acted as if nothing had happened. Ling Han naturally heard them clearly, yet he acted as if he hadn't heard them. He wanted to see what the burly man's potential was, and whether he could find a way to resolve this situation. Otherwise, he would really be a brute. Junior sister. The burly man called out repeatedly, his concern evident in his words. Senior brother, don't worry about me. The green-robed beauty forced herself to say. However, under the immense pressure, she was already panting heavily. The burly man was infuriated. His black hair shot up into the sky, and a golden halo appeared from the bottom of his feet. After that, it surged to the top of his head and disappeared. However, 10 divine inscriptions suddenly appeared on his fist. He instantly unleashed his divine might. Pung pung pung. His 4 lackeys were instantly sent flying as they wailed in agony. Ling Han couldn't help but laugh. He was speechless. Qin Wentian was thinking that the burly man would think of a way to neutralize his divine inscriptions. In combat, one couldn't just rely on the word Mang. Yet this fellow actually used the word Mang to its fullest potential. If I can't increase the number of divine inscriptions 1 by 1, then I'll add 10 by 10. This was definitely not a small burden for the muscular man, but the current him was indeed awe-inspiring, with an invincible demeanor. Let go of my junior apprentice sister, the man roared and charged at Zhang Tong. Humph, you don't know what's good for you. Zhang Tong stretched out his hand and pressed down. Wang! His origin power transformed into divine chains that interwove into a net that covered the muscular man's head. The gap in cultivation level between the two of them was far too wide. Even if Ling Han was beaten back to the low extreme, he would still be unable to match a cultivator in the consummate level. Unless he was a 10-star genius, he would be able to match a cultivator in the late stage of the consummate level right after advancing to the low extreme. That was freakish. Senior apprentice brother. Senior apprentice brother. Don't worry, I know what I'm doing. Zhang Tong chuckled. Miss, can you tell me your name now? The green-robed beauty glared at Zhang Tong with an unyielding expression. Zhang Tong wasn't angered by this, and he turned to his 4 subordinates, who had just crawled to their feet, and said, Hit him back in the same way he hit you just then. Yes, young Master Tong. The 4 of them all grinned viciously. No. The green-robed beauty paled in shock. How could this person be so despicable? Miss, what's your name? Zhang Tong asked with a laugh. This green-robed beauty was a young girl who was inexperienced, so he was naturally going to eat her up. And my name is... The green-robed beauty's eyes widened, and she tried her best to hold back her tears. She felt both aggrieved and furious. Ling Han finally stepped forward and said, How could you let such a despicable person know of your name? Wouldn't that be an insult to you? He stopped the green-robed beauty from speaking. Zhang Tong's expression darkened. He had already gained complete control of the situation, yet this brat had actually ruined his rhythm. He humped coldly and said, "What are you still standing around for? Kill him." His eyes narrowed, and a sinister killing intent radiated from them. Did they really think that he didn't dare to kill them? They were too naive. The Majestic Heaven sect wasn't a charity, and they weren't disciples of the Majestic Heaven sect either. Even if they died, they would die for nothing. The 4 lackeys had just suffered a loss at the hands of the muscular man, and were feeling humiliated. The appearance of Ling Han gave them a chance to redeem themselves. They didn't think that Ling Han was very strong, and they all charged forward. At least this brat has some backbone. However, it's useless. So what if he can defeat these 4? Zhang Tong is at the consummate level. How many people in the younger generation can suppress him? Indeed, the true prodigies have long since been recruited into the Majestic Heaven sect. Moreover, Zhang Tong was a key disciple in the past, and he's also a prodigy among prodigies. Those who can suppress him at the same cultivation level are only seeded elites. The surrounding people all shook their heads. This was a battle without any suspense. Who asked this brat to be so blind as to insist on fighting Zhang Tong? Couldn't he have just stepped aside? It's not like he would have lost a piece of flesh. The 4 lackeys charged over from different directions, all of them wearing sinister expressions. They really had done things like killing people many times. Ling Han shook his head, raised his hand and flicked his fingers. Xiao 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 xiao. 4 flashes of sword chi shot out. Although he had flicked them with his fingers, these 4 flashes of sword chi possessed a supreme aura, as if the heavens were collapsing. This was Ling Han using regulations. In the large tomb in the galaxy, Ling Han had already been inspired by the Sword of Regulations. Moreover, after such a long time, Ling Han had been comprehending them under the reincarnation tree, and his grasp of them had naturally deepened. Now, with just a flick of his fingers, sword intent and the power of regulations filled the air. Pa 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 pa. 4 crisp sounds rang out, and the heads of the 4 lackeys exploded at almost the same time. Their divine sense was instantly destroyed. A deathly silence fell over the surroundings. This young man had a gentle appearance, but his attacks were as swift as lightning. Moreover, they were decisive, and he didn't even give them a chance to beg for mercy. However, although these 4 lackeys were insignificant, who was Zhang Tong? He was Yang Hao's follower, and he had once been a key disciple. He was able to follow Yang Hao and listen to the teachings of the Great Tao from time to time. How could his battle prowess not be terrifying? Although he hadn't advanced to the Sun Moon tier yet, he was definitely one of the most powerful cultivators in the Mountain River tier. Sigh. Everyone shook their heads on Ling Han's behalf. This young man was far too reckless. He didn't even leave a way out for himself. Initially, he could have completely protected himself and retreated as he fought. Zhang Tong might not have pursued him personally. But now? If Zhang Tong didn't kill Ling Han, how could he still have any face left? Humph! I underestimated you, Zhang Tong said coldly, his eyes cold. Humph! I underestimated you, Zhang Tong said coldly, his eyes cold. However, he was naturally unafraid. He had been accepted as a key disciple, and possessed a power of 5 stars. His battle prowess had soared to 6 stars. Now that he was following Yang Hao and listening to the teachings of the true meanings of martial art, his battle prowess had naturally risen to a whole new level. Who could match his battle prowess of 7 stars? Was even more refreshing. Chapter 1138. You're quite bold, Zhang Tong said in a menacing voice. You even dared to kill members of the Majestic Heaven sect. Ling Han laughed and shook his head. You're wrong. You're just a lackey and a lackey. What does that have to do with the Majestic Heaven sect? Zhang Tong couldn't help but feel stifled. His lackey had said that the 5 of them weren't members of the Majestic Heaven sect, so the rules of the Majestic Heaven sect couldn't be applied to them. So what if they killed someone? But now Ling Han was using the same words to retaliate. However, this brat was far too immoral. He kept calling them lackey and lackey. He stared at Ling Han and said, That's right. You can do anything you want if you're strong. However, if I were to attack you, how many moves do you think you can block? Oh, are you very strong? Ling Han picked his ear completely unfazed. Zhang Tong humphed and said, I'm at the peak stage of the mountain river tier. My power is 5 stars, and my battle prowess can reach 7 stars. What? Everyone in the surroundings exclaimed in shock upon hearing this. They felt their scalps go numb. Was this possible? 5-star geniuses only existed in legends. However, this guy's power alone had reached 5 stars, and his battle prowess had soared to 7 stars. If this was true, what kind of follower was he? He was a seed-level cultivator. However, Ling Han understood that the path of martial art was like rowing a boat against the current. If one didn't advance, they would be pushed back. Zhang Tong had 5 stars of power now, but he might not be able to maintain it after advancing to the Sun-Moon tier. Perhaps his power would drop to 4 stars or even 3 stars. For example, he could raise the upper limit of his power to 10 stars after forming his 5th mountain river. However, if he couldn't form his 5th sun and moon after advancing to the Sun-Moon tier, his power would drop to 9 stars or even 8 stars. If the heavenly body tier still stopped at 4 stars, then it would drop to 6 stars or even 7 stars. Thus, the number of stars of geniuses wasn't fixed. Moreover, the higher one's cultivation level, the more difficult it would be to maintain the power of high stars. This was because one had to cultivate to an extremely high level in each cultivation level. 5 stars of power? He smiled faintly. Indeed, 5 stars of power was very powerful, but he had already possessed 6 stars of power before he had formed his 5th mountain river, and now it had soared to 7 stars. Don't say that there was only a difference of 2 stars of power, but from 6 stars to 7 stars, this was a qualitative leap, and could only be achieved by forming 5 mountains and river. It was just like how the last 3 stars of power of the Shattering Void tier could only be bestowed by heaven and earth. Are you afraid? Zhang Tong sneered. Get on your knees, kowtow, and acknowledge me as your master. I pity you for your hard work, so I'll take you in as my servant. Ling Han shook his head and said, You think too highly of yourself. Alright, make your move. I can't be bothered to waste words with trash like you. I have to get rid of you quickly. I still have important matters to attend to. Puff. Everyone was so shocked that they stuck out their tongues. You're still so stubborn at this time. A 7-star genius was practically invincible. Such a genius could only be a follower. What kind of genius was Yang Hao? 8 stars, 9 stars, or even 10 stars? You're courting death. Zhang Tong finally couldn't help but attack. He stretched out his right hand and struck out at Ling Han. He had only unleashed this strike casually. He had been too confident, and thought that this strike would be enough to kill him. Ling Han still flicked his finger. Xiao! A streak of sword light swept past, stunning the heavens. Ah! Zhang Tong clutched at his hand as he retreated. Blood flowed out from between his fingers and dripped onto the ground. Everyone stuck out their tongues again, unable to say anything. He was a mighty 7-star genius, and he was already standing at the peak stage of the mountain river tier. Yet, he had actually been wounded with a flick of his finger? How could they accept this? Zhang Tong was astonished. He raised his hand and a hole appeared in his right palm. The transparent, bloody hole caused his hair to stand on end. Although he had only unleashed a casual strike, Ling Han had also been incredibly relaxed. It didn't seem like he had used any secret technique, yet the might of this strike had completely crushed him. How could such a terrifying freak appear on a day like this? Hadn't top-notch prodigies already been recruited into the sect? Although Zhang Tong was arrogant and domineering, did he really think that he was brainless? Of course not. He had calculated that there wouldn't be any super prodigies appearing on a day like this. Thus, he could naturally be arrogant and domineering. One had to realize that he was a key disciple prodigy, and he was also standing at the peak stage of the mountain river tier. It could be said that even many seeds were no match for him. The gap between their cultivation levels was too large. Now, however, he had encountered a powerful opponent. What? Haven't you learned your lesson? Ling Han said coldly. However, you don't need to learn your lesson either. After all, you won't have a future. Bullshit. Zhang Tong roared. He slapped his chest, and a green light flickered as a small green cauldron appeared. However, the green cauldron immediately began to spin and expand as soon as it appeared. It soon transformed into a huge cauldron that was 30 meters tall. "Suppress!" he roared. The green cauldron immediately released tens of thousands of wisps of green gas that surged toward Ling Han. Each wisp of green gas transformed into a huge snake that was as heavy as a mountain. They hadn't even neared Ling Han yet an indescribable might was already descending upon him, causing the earth to tremble. This was an incredible divine artifact. "Emerald Cliff Cauldron!" someone exclaimed in astonishment. "This is Lord Yonghao's supreme treasure. He actually bestowed it to him." "What?" "The Emerald Cliff Cauldron is a Sun Moon tier god tool. It's said that it's a level 8 god tool, and it's ranked near the top among Sun Moon tier god tools." "No, this isn't the Emerald Cliff Cauldron. Just an imitation. Otherwise, would we still be standing here and spectating this battle?" "That's true. If such a god tool appeared, just a wisp of its aura would be enough to suppress us. However, even if it's just an imitation, it's still extremely terrifying. It's probably one of the best god tools among Mountain River tier god tools." Is Zhang Tong using his heart's blood to nourish this god tool? This means that he can't control it with his own power. He has to use his heart's blood to nourish the god tool so that it becomes a part of his body. Only then can he control it. That person is going to suffer this time. Boom! The wisps of green gas crashed into the ground, and it was as if numerous huge stars were descending from the sky. Even the ground trembled from the impact. It was an incredibly terrifying sight. A cold smile appeared on Zhang Tong's face. He had actually been forced to use the imitation Emerald Cliff Cauldron. This brat was quite powerful. However, everything was over now. With his strength and the Emerald Cliff Cauldron, what Mountain River tier cultivator couldn't he suppress? What? However, his expression instantly changed. This was because the Emerald Cliff Cauldron was still trembling. This couldn't suppress that brat. Pung! The green gas surged into the sky, and Ling Han punched into the sky. The green cauldron swayed from the impact, and even the green gas couldn't descend anymore. Wah! Zhang Tong spat out a mouthful of blood. His mind was connected to the Emerald Cliff Cauldron, so when the green cauldron was struck, he also felt as if he had suffered a heavy blow. He felt as if his body were boiling, and it was as if it were about to explode. Everyone was astonished. Was even more refreshing. Chapter 1140. This was a super prodigy who wasn't inferior to Xiao Sisi or Xia Wuk, and her power had reached 6 stars. How terrifying was an increase of 6 stars at the peak stage of the Mountain River tier. Whoosh! This whip swept through the wind and clouds, and it was as if it were going to tear a hole in the sky. Different, very different. Although Fu Liangye was also a seed-level prodigy, his cultivation level was far too low, after all. He couldn't compare to her at all. Ling Han thought that if this were 2 years ago, he would only be able to withstand this whip with his physique. Now, however, he casually raised his hand and clamped down with 2 fingers. Pa! The whip obediently stopped between his fingers. Pooh! Seeing this scene, countless people were so shocked that they stuck out their tongues. That was a seed-level prodigy of the Majestic Heaven sect. Moreover, she was standing at the peak stage of the Mountain River tier. Theoretically speaking, she should be invincible in the Mountain River tier. At least, no one could suppress her. However, this young man had easily clamped down on her whip, and it seemed as if he still had strength to spare. Just how vast was the gap between their strength? Gan Shiyun also widened her beautiful eyes, and a chill rose up in her heart. How could this young man be so powerful? He hadn't used any secret techniques, and he had merely clamped down on her whip with pure strength. This meant that his strength was far superior to hers. Secondly, his physique was extremely terrifying. Otherwise, no matter how powerful she was, she couldn't possibly catch a god tool with her bare hands. She would still be injured no matter how powerful she was. However, did such a person exist in this world? If there was, shouldn't he be a seed of the Majestic Heaven sect? Ling Han relaxed his fingers and said, "Don't be too domineering. Being kind to others is also giving yourself a way out. He smiled at Hu Feiyun and said, "Ninth King, there's a letter for you." Hu Feiyun was still in a daze, and she blankly accepted the letter. She hurriedly scanned through it, and there was a strange expression on her face as she said, "Big sister sent you to become my follower?" "That's right." Ling Han nodded. "What?" The people nearby were all stunned when they heard the conversation between the two of them. A person who could take a whip from Gan Shiyun with just 2 fingers had actually become Hu Feiyun's follower. Although everyone was fighting to become the followers of the seeds, that was only because their own natural talent wasn't too high. Thus, they weren't able to be recruited by the Majestic Heaven sect. Thus, they had to take a shortcut to save their country. Otherwise, how many people would be willing to lower themselves to the status of a servant? From the strength that Ling Han had displayed, he was completely qualified to become a seed. Why would he need to be a follower? Even if he missed out on the Majestic Heaven sect's disciple recruitment this time, couldn't he wait for the next time? It was only 100 years, and to immortals 100 years wasn't a very long time. Everyone was confused. Then they looked at Hu Feiyun with envy. Being able to obtain such a powerful follower meant that her status in the sect would be even higher. "Who are you?" Hu Feiyun was still very confused. Ling Han smiled and said, "Han Lin." "Han Lin, Han Lin, Ling Han." Hu Feiyun's beautiful eyes suddenly lit up. Her confusion instantly disappeared, and a smile blossomed on her face. Her personality was a bit muddle-headed, and this smile was filled with the naivety and adorableness of a young girl. Ling Han smiled faintly. Although this girl was muddle-headed, she wasn't stupid at all. She had realized who he was just by hearing his name. From this aspect, it could be seen that her reaction speed was extremely fast. Detestable. Gan Shiyun was furious. Flames surged from her body, intertwining to form dense divine patterns. She looked like a goddess of flames. "Didn't anyone tell you that interrupting others is very rude?" Ling Han turned around and berated her. That's right, that's right," Hu Feiyun repeated. Her personality hadn't changed in the slightest. Gan Shiyun's beautiful face was filled with anger. These two people were actually teasing her. Disciples of the Majestic Heaven sect naturally couldn't kill each other, but this was a mere follower. No matter how talented he was, so what if she killed him? The red seal between her brows flashed, and a furnace actually fell out. When it appeared, the surrounding temperature instantly skyrocketed. Not good. This is the Gan clan's goddess furnace. It can incinerate all living beings. It's a heavenly body tier treasure. No, this is only a replica. The real one is definitely in the Gan clan. However, it's definitely extraordinary. It's almost at the Sun Moon tier. Everyone hurriedly retreated. This was a seed at the consummate level of the Mountain River tier, and even the other seeds had to unleash their full power. How could the rest of them be qualified to spectate this battle? Ling Han positioned himself in front of Hu Feiyun. Meanwhile, the Ninth King peeked her head out from behind Ling Han's shoulder and asked in confusion, "Why is she angry?" Strange expressions appeared on the faces of the surrounding people. Would Gan Shiyun vomit blood? Gan Shiyun didn't vomit blood. Yet her beautiful face was already ashen. She activated the goddess furnace and boom! Boundless flames surged into the air, intertwining to form a series of dazzling divine patterns. It was an incredibly terrifying sight. Raging flames incinerate the heavens. She shouted and slapped the goddess furnace. The lid instantly flew up, and a ball of green flame surged out, engulfing Ling Han. Ling Han activated an origin power shield. His physical body naturally didn't care about this kind of flames, but the problem was that his clothes couldn't withstand it. If he didn't do anything, he would definitely be incinerated into nothingness. He naturally couldn't do that. I have to buy a treasured robe. I don't need it to have a powerful protective effect, but it has to be able to withstand fire and water, Ling Han thought to himself. Die! Gan Shiyun controlled the goddess furnace and charged toward Ling Han. Since the flames couldn't kill Ling Han, she would suck Ling Han into the furnace and use the divine flames to incinerate him. She would eventually be able to incinerate him into ashes. Wang! The goddess furnace enlarged, and it descended upon Ling Han's head. There was a loud boom, and the goddess furnace toppled over onto the ground. Meanwhile, Ling Han had disappeared without a trace. He had been trapped. Ha 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 ha. Gan Shiyun laughed loudly. After being sucked into the goddess furnace, no matter how heaven-defying one's strength was, it would be useless. Pung! A clear fist print appeared on the lid of the goddess furnace, and the entire furnace shuddered. Pung! Then another fist print appeared, followed by a third, a fourth. Pung 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 pung. The entire goddess furnace instantly lost its original appearance, and became incredibly irregular. The people nearby all had their mouths open wide enough to fit a fist. It was clear that this was Ling Han's display of might. Refine! Gan Shiyun hurriedly roared, and she activated the God tool with all her might. She wanted to use her supreme true flames to incinerate Ling Han. Even the seed-level prodigies paled upon seeing this. What kind of freak is this guy? He was sucked into the goddess furnace, yet not only was he not incinerated, but he's actually so lively. He almost destroyed the god furnace. Although this isn't the true goddess furnace, it's still an extremely terrifying god tool in the mountain river tier. This is unbelievable. Chapter 1141. Pung pung pung. The goddess furnace became more and more deformed as Ling Han furiously attacked it. Couldn't even be called a furnace anymore. Previously, Ling Han had to use origin power to protect his clothes, but after being sucked into the furnace, he didn't care anymore. If his clothes were burned, then so be it. In any case, his body had already reached the level of level 5 godly metal. Even elites at the low extreme of the Sun-Moon tier would find it difficult, very difficult to injure him. He could focus all his power on attacking, and his fists could be like level 5 god tools. They were covered in divine patterns and filled with destructive power. Ling Han forcefully destroyed a piece of the cauldron. However, this cauldron was forged from several layers of godly metal. Thus, after destroying one layer, he could not blast open the cauldron, and instead revealed the layer behind it. He found a divine pattern on this layer of godly metal. This is the intent of a martial art left behind by a fire cultivator. I can use it as a reference. He was overjoyed, and stopped attacking to study the divine pattern. This divine pattern wasn't complete. Only a part of it was revealed, and the rest was hidden inside the furnace. Pung 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 pung. He started to destroy again. When he finished attacking the divine pattern, Ling Han stopped and continued to comprehend it. If he continued to attack and stop like this, the people outside would find it strange. What was going on? One moment he was extremely violent and almost destroyed the furnace. However, the next moment there was no movement. Could it be that he was resting inside? Humph, who can escape from the goddess furnace? Gan Shiyun said proudly. If this was the real goddess furnace, even heavenly body tier elites could be refined. Everyone nodded. Ling Han really couldn't hold on anymore. They couldn't hear the sound of him attacking the furnace anymore. As expected, the goddess furnace lived up to its name. Humph, Ling Han won't be refined. Hu Feiyun raised her head proudly, appearing to be filled with confidence in Ling Han. In her heart, Ling Han had always been invincible, and now was no exception. What a joke. You've been trapped by the goddess furnace and you still want to turn things around, said Fu Liangye disdainfully. Gan Shiyun also sneered and said, You said that madman isn't dead yet. Then let's hear him scream. Bam! At that moment, another fist imprint appeared on the walls of the goddess furnace, and the furnace shook. Just as he was told to shout, he really did react. Such a terrifying fist strength was enough to prove that he was still alive and kicking. Gan Shiyun's and Fu Liangye's faces instantly turned ashen. This was a clear slap to their faces, and it was a resounding slap. Hu Feiyun couldn't help but giggle. She knew it. How could Ling Han possibly be trapped by this small furnace? Meanwhile, in the goddess furnace, Ling Han had already completed his research on the first divine pattern. Thus he began to smash metal again. After smashing down a piece of godly metal nearby, he continued to comprehend it. He had the Black Tower and one day was equivalent to 1 year. What kind of speed was this? After a flurry of smashing, the second complete divine pattern appeared. Ling Han memorized it, and then entered the Black Tower to comprehend it under the reincarnation tree. He wanted to comprehend this divine pattern as quickly as possible. A divine pattern of flame had already silently appeared on his mountains and rivers. He quickly exited the Black Tower. Pung pung pung. After a flurry of smashing, the third divine pattern appeared, and he continued to comprehend it. The people outside couldn't figure out what was going on. They were all baffled. Every once in a while he would smash violently. What the hell was he doing? If they said that he was about to be refined, this guy would smash with earth-shattering force every time, displaying his terrifying strength. But if they said that he was about to break out of the furnace, he would wilt after a while. What the hell are you doing? This was truly maddening. Less than half a day later, Ling Han had already broken through all of the inner walls of the goddess furnace. He had studied and grasped all of the divine patterns, yet he was still unsatisfied. He thought that it would be great if he could comprehend the true goddess furnace. Unfortunately, that was the precious treasure of the Gone clan, so how could he possibly comprehend it? Generally speaking, God tools were nurtured by cultivators with their martial art intent. They would inscribe their comprehension of the great Tao and materialize it in the form of a divine pattern. Thus, comprehending the divine pattern was equivalent to comprehending the Tao of the cultivator. Of course, not all Tao was worth comprehending. However, one could naturally tell whether it was worth comprehending or not with a single glance. As an immortal, how could they not have the ability to judge? However, since he had already comprehended the divine pattern, there was no reason for him to stay here any longer. Ling Han sighed. Why didn't they give him a few more divine patterns to comprehend? This divine pattern of flame would be of great help to him. Pung 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 pung. He began to wreak havoc. Under his full power, he was like an enraged ape, and the godly metal in front of him fell off layer by layer. Although the goddess furnace was a replica, its workmanship was extremely exquisite. It was forged from 9 layers of godly metal, and there were also divine patterns inscribed within. Its might was boundless, and it was practically indestructible. At the very least, this was the case in the mountain river tier. However, it was a completely different matter when facing a freak like Ling Han. One had to realize that his physique was comparable to level 5 godly metal, and coupled with his power of over 7 stars, his fists were practically comparable to level 5 god tools. So what if the goddess furnace was before him? It was destroyed layer by layer. Everyone was already used to this kind of banging. After all, they would hear this kind of commotion every once in a while. However, they quickly discovered that it was different this time. This was because the banging continued for far too long. Boom! A fist suddenly poked out from the goddess furnace, and a huge crack appeared on the goddess furnace that had long been deformed from the beating. Pung! Another deafening boom rang out, and the crack widened to reveal a young face. It was Ling Han. Gasp! Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. His expression was calm, and it was clear that he wasn't injured in the slightest. This was the goddess furnace, yet it had been destroyed. Moreover, the culprit was completely unscathed. Oh, Ling Han was just about to crawl out, but he immediately paused and said, "Wait a moment." He took out some clothes from the Black Tower and put them on. Then he punched a few more times, creating a hole large enough for a person to pass through. Only then did he calmly walk out. Gan Shiyun's face twitched. This was the goddess furnace. Although it was a replica, it was still a precious treasure. If it weren't for the fact that she was the most outstanding member of the Gone clan, she wouldn't have been given this treasure. However, this god tool that she was so proud of had been destroyed right in front of her. This was something she couldn't accept. Could it be that Ling Han was a human-shaped god tool? Compensate me for my goddess furnace, she screamed. This was a treasure of the clan, and she could only use it. It wasn't a gift to her. What are you talking about? This is my spoils of war. Ling Han stored the remains of the goddess furnace into the Black Tower. Although it was no longer a god tool, its materials couldn't be wasted. They could be used to improve the quality of his divine demon sword. Gan Shiyun exploded with rage. Not only did Ling Han not plan to compensate her for the goddess furnace, but he even stored the remains of it away. This was far too much. reading on a mobile phone. Chapter 1142. How dare you? Gan Shiryun was furious. You're only a follower, yet you dare to steal my god tool? Are you trying to rebel? From this point of view, she was in the right. One was a disciple of the Majestic Heaven sect, and a seed-level disciple at that. The other was a follower of a seed, and he couldn't even be considered a disciple of the Majestic Heaven sect. However, their cultivation levels were similar, and you, a seed, couldn't defeat his follower? Aren't you ashamed to ask for help from this sect? Ling Han smiled faintly and said, I only know that I won, and received a spoil of battle. If you want to take it back, you can, but you have to defeat me. Defeat me? It's that simple. These words had always been said by the seed-level geniuses. But now, a mere follower had said it in an incomparably arrogant manner. That's right, that's right. This belongs to Ling Han Lin. Hu Feiyun nodded incessantly. To say nothing of Gan Shiryun, even the other seeds looked indignant. They felt like they were being trampled on by someone else, and they had lost their dignity as seed prodigies. They all stared at Ling Han with unfriendly gazes. Ling Han laughed loudly and said, Are you guys trying to act like hooligans because of a disagreement? Haha, come. I'll accept all of your challenges. Whether it's a one-on-one or a group fight, it's up to you. However, if you lose, don't forget to sing conquer. This caused the other seeds to be so angry that their noses became crooked. One had to realize that they were invincible among their own cultivation levels. Even if they had enemies, it would be other seeds. Now that they were being looked down upon, how could they not be furious? Even before entering the Majestic Heaven sect, which one of them wasn't arrogant? Han Lin, bravo. Hu Feiyun clapped her hands. This king was also spoiled rotten. Moreover, he was also a bit muddle-headed, and didn't understand the situation at all. He continued to attract hatred for Ling Han. However, although the other seeds were all furious, none of them made a move. Wasn't this nonsense? Gan Shiryun was definitely an outstanding talent among them, but she still lost even after summoning the goddess furnace replica. If it were them, wouldn't they also lose? Such a freak? Probably only a few people in the mountain river tier could suppress him. A true king tier that had formed 5 mountains and rivers. Those who had not reached the true pinnacle level of the mountain river tier were destined to only be called prodigies, supreme prodigies, and were still some distance away from becoming king tiers. A long laugh rang out. A skinny man had unknowingly appeared among the crowd. His aura was obscure, but just by sensing him, one would feel a throbbing from the depths of one's soul. This was a peerless expert. Greetings, Elder Haiyun. All of the seeds hurriedly cupped their hands in greeting, their expressions extremely respectful, because this was an elite of the heavenly body tier. Although they were all prodigies and had been classified as seeds, at least 90% of them would be able to advance to the Sun-Moon tier. Moreover, they would basically be able to reach the peak stage of the Sun-Moon tier. However, only 10% of them would be able to advance to the heavenly body tier. This was already an overestimation. Therefore, when faced with such a powerhouse, who couldn't hide their arrogance? Elder Haiyun waved his hand as he stared at Ling Han. The more he stared, the more shocked he became. Thankfully, there was an aura of primal chaos shrouding his face, and it was impossible to see his expression clearly. Otherwise, everyone would definitely be astonished that a heavenly body tier elite would actually be moved to such an extent. Young man, are you interested in joining our sect? Elder Haiyun asked with a smile. I can guarantee that you will be able to obtain the status of a seed. Everyone was both shocked and felt that this was only natural. With Ling Han's strength, he had easily defeated Gan Shiryun, who was a seed. Moreover, their cultivation levels were the same. This was enough to prove how terrifying Ling Han was. If such a prodigy could not enter the Majestic Heaven sect and become a seed, then how could the other seeds sit in their positions stably? However, the Majestic Heaven sect had its own rules. It had never made an exception to accept a disciple, and would only accept a disciple once every 100 years. This was something that had been decided a long time ago. However, Elder Hai Yun actually made an exception for Ling Han after seeing him once. This naturally shocked everyone. Ling Han thought for a moment, and said, "This junior is willing to join the Majestic Heaven sect. This was his plan in the first place." Elder Hai Yun instantly laughed loudly, appearing extremely satisfied. He nodded and said, "You all can choose your followers. That Han Lin, come with me later. I have some things to say to you." "Yes." Ling Han nodded, appearing extremely respectful. This was the respect that was necessary for an elite. Gan Shiyun trembled in anger. What should she do now? Ling Han had also become a seed, and she could not even borrow the power of the sect. No, she definitely had to get revenge for this. If her strength was not enough, then she would find others, those true freaks. Ling Han's eyes swept over the crowd, and he strode toward the pair of brothers and sisters that had stood up for him previously. Times had changed. His current status was completely different. Everywhere he passed, everyone automatically made way for him. Then they looked at him with fervent gazes, hoping that they could be chosen as his follower. Many beauties even threw flirtatious glances at him, their expressions extremely suggestive. If they could be chosen by Ling Han, they definitely would not hesitate to give up their bodies. Moreover, being able to give themselves to a seed genius was not like a sparrow flying onto a branch, becoming a phoenix from now on. Unfortunately, Ling Han was completely disdainful of them, and directly walked up to the pair of brothers and sisters. Meanwhile, the ninth king followed behind him. She was extremely bored here, and it was rare for her to meet an old friend, so she naturally had many things to say. "This brother, are you interested in becoming my follower?" Ling Han asked with a smile. "Also, this junior sister of yours can become her follower." She pointed at Hu Feiyun. Hu Feiyun tilted her head and looked at the green-clothed beauty, appearing very indifferent. She really did not mind who she took as her follower. Since Ling Han had spoken, she naturally would not refute. The pair of brothers and sisters were naturally overjoyed, but also a little fearful. Ling Han said, "You acted righteously, and I must accept your kind intentions. As a cultivator, temperament is the most important." "I greatly admire you." The pair of brothers and sisters looked at each other and nodded. "My name is Fan Ru," the senior brother said. "My junior sister is Chan Xiao. Thank you, young Master Han, and—" He looked at Hu Feiyun, not knowing her identity. "She is Hu Feiyun," Ling Han said with a smile. "Greetings, Master." Chan Xiao immediately curtsied. Hu Feiyun hurriedly pulled her up and said, "Just call me Fei Fei. I don't like being called Master." Chan Xiao nodded and instantly had a good impression of Hu Feiyun. "All right, let's enter the sect," Ling Han said with a smile. He missed Shui Yanyu and his three brothers very much. He walked side by side with Hu Feiyun, while Fan Ru and Chan Xiao were a few steps behind. The other seeds also began to choose their followers. The scene immediately became noisy, and everyone fought to be first. Ling Han had Fan Ru and her junior sister leave with Hu Feiyun first, while he went to see Elder Hai Yun. He followed him to a courtyard on the main peak. This place was shrouded in clouds and mist, like a paradise on earth. "This is not your true appearance. Did you offend too many people and are being hunted?" Elder Hai Yun asked directly. Chapter 1144. PS May 1st update, don't rush off to play after. Remember to cast a monthly ticket first. Double the monthly ticket for Fan Festival on Chidian 55 now, and you can also send red packets for other activities. Because they were far away, Ling Han couldn't hear what the two of them were talking about. He only saw the green-robed young man continuously pester Shui Yanyu, while Shui Yanyu coldly ignored him. After not seeing her for 2 years, Shui Yanyu was still as beautiful as before, but there was an additional coldness that kept people at a distance like an icy beauty. However, her style was the seductive type, so this formed a sense of arrogance with the demeanor of a queen, and a bit of the charm of Empress Luanxing. Ling Han couldn't help but be startled. He actually thought of Empress Luanxing again. This empress's charm was too great, always making him think of her from time to time. Ling Han shook his head. dispelling the sexy and enchanting figure of Empress Luan Xing from his mind. It was not good to think of another woman in front of Shui Yanyu. He strode over. His wife was targeted by an annoying fly, so he naturally had to go and protect her. Because they were walking face to face, the distance between them naturally shortened very quickly. Junior sister Shui, why don't we go to Grey Eagle Gorge later? I heard that a godly medicine appeared there, and many people went to try their luck. The green-robed young man's voice drifted over. Bai Hua, how many times have I said, don't follow me? Shui Yanyu said coldly, raising her right hand and condensing frost. She was really angered. She was a beautiful woman, but didn't give off the slightest feeling of disgust, but instead had a kind of charm. The green-robed young man Bai Hua couldn't help but stare. This delicate flower had been taken by him ever since she entered the sect, and under his tyrannical power, naturally no one dared to compete with him, and she was regarded as his exclusive property. Unfortunately, this seductive beauty was always stingy with her smile, which made him disappointed, but made his fighting spirit even more exuberant. He wanted to pluck this ice mountain snow lotus and let her blossom with a passionate smile for him. His heart surged, and he wanted nothing more than to pounce on this beauty. Hey, your eyeballs are about to fall out of their sockets. Ling Han walked up and cut in between the two of them. Shui Yanyu immediately showed an expression of disgust, and hurriedly retreated a few steps. She disliked Bai Hua, but that did not mean that she would get close to other men. Bai Hua, on the other hand, was annoyed. Who do you think you are, to actually dare to meddle in other people's business? He coughed and said, Junior martial brother, you look unfamiliar. Which martial uncle are you under? In the Majestic Heaven sect, ordinary disciples and key disciples would all be apprenticed to an elite of the Sun-Moon tier. However, they would be addressed as teacher instead of master. Of course, if both parties were very satisfied, they could go one step further and form a master-disciple relationship. However, seated prodigies weren't subject to this restriction. These prodigies could all receive the teachings of heavenly body tier elites. Moreover, there wasn't a fixed number of people who could receive the teachings of heavenly body tier elites. Any heavenly body tier elite would come over to instruct them when they were free. In fact, even Venerable Trinity would occasionally appear. Ling Han smiled and said, What junior brother? How can you be so blind? I'm your senior brother. Bai Hua was furious. He was a key disciple. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to intimidate so many disciples and monopolize Shui Yanyu. There was no mark of a seed on Ling Han's body, and he recognized all the key disciples. Then there was only one possibility. He was an ordinary disciple. In the Majestic Heaven sect, the hierarchy was still relatively strict. No matter how high the cultivation level of an ordinary disciple was, as long as they were of the same major cultivation level, they could only address key disciples and seeds as senior brothers or senior sisters. Of course, it was the same for key disciples as well. In front of seeds, they could only lower their heads. They were all in the Mountain River tier. And you, an ordinary disciple, actually dared to address yourself as senior brother in front of me, a key disciple. To put it more seriously, this was treason. How dare you? Bai Hua's expression darkened. There were people passing by nearby, and seeing that there was some commotion to be had, they naturally all stopped and began to act. They were also responsible for explaining, clearly analyzing Bai Hua's identity and battle prowess. Ling Han asked, What? You're not convinced? Submit your head. Bai Hua moved and charged towards Ling Han to attack. Hong, he shot out a fist, and the power of his fist transformed into a black wolf that surged towards Ling Han. This was formed from origin power, and condensed with the intent of martial art. Over 30 divine patterns flickered, and it could be seen that even if he did not use his full power in this attack, he had at least used 70% to 80% of his power. After all, he was only a key disciple, so how many divine patterns could he condense? Ling Han pretended to be flustered, and only managed to disperse this attack after throwing over a dozen punches. Who is this person? Though he dispelled this attack very pathetically, being able to disperse the attack of a key disciple Bai Hua shows that he is very strong. That's right, Bai Hua has already reached the peak stage of the consummate level. This person could not possibly have an advantage in cultivation level, and completely relied on his own ability. Does our Blackwater Peak have such a disciple? Everyone looked at each other, and shook their heads. Bai Hua saw that he had gained the upper hand with a single strike, and naturally had no reservations. This was also within his expectations. With the same cultivation level, how could an ordinary disciple be a match for a key disciple? Otherwise, why would there be a distinction between ordinary disciples and key disciples? He attacked domineeringly, each move swift and fierce. Ling Han only defended and did not attack, purposely making himself look a little pathetically sorry to avoid giving Shui Yinyu any clues. True enough, this seductive beauty did not recognize him at all. Though she stood at the side, she did not show any obvious inclination. In Shui Yinyu's eyes, he was probably only lusting after her beauty, and that was why he was putting on a brave front. Ling Han suddenly had no intention of continuing to play with Bai Hua. Playing with a man or playing with his own wife, which was more interesting? Pung! His fist landed on Bai Hua's face, and the latter was instantly sent flying. Fuck! Seeing this scene, everyone in the surroundings was stunned, and they all stuck out their tongues in unison. That was Bai Hua, a key disciple. It must be a coincidence. Everyone thought. Otherwise, with Bai Hua's ability, how could he possibly have suffered such a blow? Even Bai Hua thought so. The other's punch had suddenly broken through his defenses, and he could not parry in time. He could only watch helplessly as he was struck. He bounced up from the ground, and with a loud roar, he charged towards Ling Han again. Pung 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 pung. After a few more exchanges, Bai Hua's lower abdomen was kicked, and he was sent flying. It was another coincidence. Bai Hua's face twitched and he charged back again. However, after a few moves he was slapped back again. This time everyone realized that something was wrong. How could there be such a coincidence? Bai Hua had suffered time and time again. Hee, what are you all doing? A newcomer rushed over and looked around curiously. However, when he saw the two combatants, he could not help but burst out in laughter. What is it? The person beside him asked. Ha ha ha, Bai Hua is seeking his own humiliation. That person laughed loudly. This senior brother is a super genius who was accepted as a seed yesterday. Even senior sister Gon Shurian's goddess furnace was destroyed by him. Pooh! Everyone choked on their saliva. Thank you all for your support all this while. This time, I hope you all can support the Chidian 55th Fan Festival's Hall of Glory and the general election of works. Additionally, there are also some red packets and gift bags for the fan festival. Collect them, and continue to subscribe. Chapter 1145. PS May 1st update. Don't rush off to play. Remember to cast a monthly ticket first. Double the monthly ticket for Fan Festival at Chidian 55. And you can also send red packets for other activities. In the Majestic Heaven sect, every seed was definitely famous. About 10,000 ordinary disciples would be recruited at a time, while only 1,000 key disciples would be recruited. As for seeds, at most 100. Moreover, they had to be of age, sometimes only a dozen. There had never been a precedent of cultivating a heavenly body tier elite from ordinary disciples or key disciples, but there were such examples among seed geniuses, and the ratio was as high as 10%. Don't underestimate this ratio. One had to know that only 1 out of 10 Shattering Void tier cultivators could break through to the Mountain River tier, and starting from the Mountain River tier, countless people would be stuck at each minor level. Calculating again from Mountain River tier to Heavenly Body tier, there was a whole 6 minor levels and 2 major tiers. Thus, in billions of Mountain River tier cultivators, perhaps only one could reach the Heavenly Body tier. Thus, 10% of seeds could reach the Heavenly Body tier. How terrifying was this ratio? But this was also very normal because seed geniuses were the most prodigies of each planet, so wasn't the high ratio of breaking through to the Heavenly Body tier a very normal thing? Ling Han was actually a seed. Everyone was shocked, but also couldn't help but find it funny. Previously, Bai Hua said that Ling Han didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth, putting on airs as a senior brother. But in the end, he was the senior brother. These words Bai Hua naturally heard clearly, and his face had already turned the color of pig liver. This was really too embarrassing. He hated Ling Han, but dared not have any thoughts of revenge in his heart. Revenge on a seed genius, he was tired of living. Covering his face, Bai Hua retreated to one side. He didn't dare to compete with Ling Han. A seed was a seed, his battle prowess too strong. Ling Han looked at Shui Yinyu, smiled and said, "Girl, I saved you. Shouldn't you repay me with your body?" Everyone looked at each other, not knowing what expression they should have. Was it really good for you to take liberties in broad daylight at the slightest disagreement? Even if he was a seed, he couldn't be so arrogant. This was the majestic heaven sect, and if the safety of sect disciples couldn't be guaranteed, then what meaning was there in existence? "Thank you," Shui Yinyu said coldly. Bai Hua did not leave because he wanted Ling Han to be humiliated in front of Shui Yinyu. As expected, this woman did not even give face to a seed. He couldn't help but feel a sense of joy in his heart. If he couldn't obtain something, he naturally hoped that others couldn't obtain it as well. "What if I insist?" Ling Han stood in front of Shui Yinyu and spread his arms wide, looking like a bully trying to steal his bride. "The sect has its own rules," Shui Yinyu said coldly. She did not believe that the great elites of the sect would allow Ling Han to do this. Ling Han laughed mischievously and said, "You are my wife, it is destined." These words were spoken in his own voice. Shui Yinyu instantly faltered, and a hint of pleasant surprise appeared on her pretty face. However, at the same time she was also cautious. After all, she could not determine a person based on their voice alone. "Come give me a hug," Ling Han said. He did not care whether Shui Yinyu agreed or not, and directly pulled her into his arms. Fuck, he really had to do it. Everyone gritted their teeth, feeling that this seed genius was too perverted. He actually dared to take liberties with their junior sister in front of everyone's eyes. Wasn't this seeking death? No matter how much of a genius you were, who could protect you if you publicly trampled on the sect's rules? Once she was hugged, Shui Yinyu naturally immediately smelled a familiar scent. It was him. She couldn't help but become excited, and involuntarily stretched out her arms to hug Ling Han. Pooh! Everyone spluttered again. What was going on? They hooked up so quickly. They did not know that Ling Han and Shui Yinyu were already a couple, and thought that Shui Yinyu was moved by Ling Han's hug like this. Naturally, all of them regretted using force on this seductive beauty. "You were so easy to get." Bai Hua even spat out a mouthful of blood. He felt that he was too wronged. So this woman liked domineering men. Previously, he had painstakingly pursued Shui Yinyu, but to no avail. Now a forceful hug from Ling Han caused Shui Yinyu to melt. How could he not be furious? He only felt that he was the biggest idiot in the world. After 2 years apart, Shui Yinyu's passion was like fire, and she took the initiative to ask Ling Han for a kiss. Ling Han naturally would not disappoint the beauty, and kissed her heavily. Wah! There was a great commotion in the surroundings, and everyone was calling him an adulterer in their minds. This was naturally sour grapes, too jealous. A terrifying aura swept over, causing endless coldness to rise from the depths of their souls. Pa 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 pa. Other than Ling Han, everyone collapsed onto the ground at the same time, and Shui Yinyu also collapsed weakly into Ling Han's arms, her delicate body trembling. Ling Han turned his head in shock, and saw that Hu Feiyun was glaring at him and Shui Yinyu balefully. That endless might was precisely emanating from her body. But now, Ling Han felt that this was not that muddle-headed girl. Empress Luanxing previously, in the Heavenly Sea Mystery Realm, Ling Han had felt Empress Luanxing appear on Hu Feiyun's body in a strange way, and now it happened again. But there was no danger now, so why did she come out? Wait, could it be because she was jealous? Ling Han felt that it was inconceivable, but aside from this reason, was there a second possibility? He put down Shui Yinyu, and hurriedly sprinted towards Hu Feiyun. He grabbed her wrist and said, "Come with me." Hu Feiyun no Empress Luanxing's eyes widened as if she wanted to use her divine might to shake off Ling Han, but for some reason her heart softened, and she allowed him to run with her. The two of them soon arrived at the White Frost Peak, and entered Ling Han's palace. "What's the matter with you?" Ling Han asked. Empress Luanxing humphed and said, "What right do you have to question me? Just now you almost killed me." Can't I ask why? Ling Han said angrily. In fact, Empress Luanxing didn't know why she had come out. It was completely because she had acted on impulse. But she naturally wouldn't admit it, and said, I'll kill whoever I want to kill. Why do I have so many whys? How tsundere? Ling Han said seriously, today you have to give me an honest explanation. What is your relationship with the ninth king? Why can you appear on her body? Do you think I would tell this secret to an unrelated person? Empress Luanxing smirked coldly, but she was going crazy in her heart. A mere mountain river tear actually dared to bargain in front of her? When did heavenly body tear become so worthless? Ling Han stared at her for a while and said, fine, I can tell you some of my secrets, and you can't hide anything from me either. Empress Luanxing really wanted to say what kind of status did he have, and what position did he have to make such a request of her. However, the bits and pieces of her interaction with Ling Han in these 2 years surfaced in her mind, especially in the last part, when she took the initiative to ask for his pleasure. That scene made her blush, and her heart beat faster. She couldn't help but feel a little weaker in front of Ling Han. Don't resist my divine sense. I'll take you into my spatial god tool. Thank you everyone for your support all this while. This time, I hope that everyone can support the Honor Hall of the Qidian 55th Fan Festival and the general election of works. Additionally, there were also some red packets and gift bags for the fan festival. Take one and continue to subscribe. Chapter 1146. PS May 1st update, don't go play after that, remember to vote monthly. Double monthly tickets for fan festival at Qidian 55. And you can also give red packets for other events. Empress Luan Huan naturally knew that Ling Han had a spatial god tool. If not, she would have definitely pushed him down. Thinking of this, she couldn't help but blush. In this body, she couldn't use her power to the fullest, so the aura of chaos wasn't obvious. Ling Han could clearly see her expression. This caused Ling Han to be surprised. This empress actually had such a bashful side. The sun rose from the west. Why are you staring at me? Empress Luan Huan was a little angry from embarrassment. Ling Han chuckled. He really couldn't feel any respect for this empress now. Come. He swept up the empress and entered the Black Tower. How is this possible? Empress Luan Huan exclaimed. This divine tool was too big. There are many impossible things. Ling Han was slightly proud. Being able to shock this empress made him feel very accomplished. As Empress Luan Huan walked, she couldn't help but feel even more astonished. Because there were all kinds of godly medicines planted here, each one flourishing, and their age was very shocking. This made her feel incredulous. Ling Han had clearly just opened the sky, so how could he plant so many godly medicines? The timing didn't match. Come. Ling Han grabbed the Empress's slender hand and ran forward. Empress Luan Huan was instantly annoyed. This guy was addicted to grabbing her hand, right? She instantly swung, wanting to shake Ling Han off, but found that she was actually no match for Ling Han's strength, and couldn't help but be shocked. Her cultivation was clearly still, and hadn't weakened in the slightest, but she actually couldn't break free from a mere mountain river tear. How was this possible? She was extremely shocked. Welcome to my world. Ling Han laughed loudly. In this place I am the only king. Humph. Small tower appeared, and released a sound of dissatisfaction. Ling Han's lips twitched and he sighed and said, of course, there's also the tool spirit of this divine tool, always looking down on me, its master. I'm really sorry, Small Tower said without any sincerity. Empress Luanxing was dumbfounded. What kind of god tool was this? It was so awesome that it actually allowed Ling Han's strength to far surpass hers. Moreover, why was this tool spirit so human-like? It was completely unlike ordinary tool spirits that were cold and aloof, and only followed some kind of rule. Under Ling Han's guidance, they quickly arrived at the reincarnation tree. The notionless saint was the first to discover them. He looked at Empress Luanxing with a confused expression and said, you look a bit like that little girl from before, yet you're clearly not the same person. Strange, young Master Han. Ken Yi and the others bowed in greeting. Ling Han waved his hand and said, "It's fine. You guys should continue to cultivate and strive to break through to the God realm as soon as possible." Understood. The four of them returned to the reincarnation tree and continued to cultivate. Meanwhile, Empress Luanxing stared at the reincarnation tree as if she recognized it. After a long while she exclaimed, "This is the reincarnation tree." Ling Han nodded and said, "You're really knowledgeable to recognize this." Empress Luanxing pondered for a moment before saying, "You once bought a reincarnation seed. Could this be smart?" Ling Han gave her a thumbs up. No amount of praise could be too much for such a beauty. Empress Luanxing naturally wouldn't take his deliberate praise seriously. Instead, she pondered for a moment before saying, "You've only been in the immortal realm for a little over 2 years. No matter what, it's impossible for you to have obtained so many godly medicines." In addition to this reincarnation tree, there's only one possibility. Her eyes lit up and she said, "You have the ability to accelerate the growth of godly medicines." Ling Han chuckled and said, "How about it? Do you want to cultivate here? This is the reincarnation tree. Cultivating here for a day is equivalent to comprehending Tao for a year in the outside world." Empress Luanxing immediately looked tempted. For elites like her, the accumulation of origin power could be said to be a small matter, and she could complete it in a few thousand years. However, the comprehension of the great Tao could be calculated in millions or even tens of millions of years. There was only one eternal river tier in this galaxy, and she knew how difficult it was to take the next step. "What conditions do you have?" However, Empress Luanxing immediately stared at Ling Han. This could no longer be described as a favor. As long as she revealed the secret that Ling Han possessed a reincarnation tree, he would be hunted down by all the saints in the world. "Don't tell me you want me to marry you?" Ling Han's expression became serious and he said, "I've already said that I'll tell you my big secret. In return you have to tell me yours." Empress Luanxing humphed. "Do you think this is child's play? You tell me one and I'll tell you one." However, she had to admit that Ling Han really trusted her. He even told her such a big secret like possessing a reincarnation tree. She couldn't help but feel a sliver of gratitude. Just a sliver, she emphasized to herself. "What do you want to know?" The Empress asked proudly. "What is the relationship between you and this body?" Ling Han asked. This was clearly Hu Feiyan's body, yet it had now become Empress Luanxing's. She was powerful, and although she wasn't as powerful as Empress Luanxing's main body, she had still reached the heavenly body tier. "Haha, I know." The notionless saint suddenly shouted. He was unwilling to be ignored. "Seen your nose?" Ling Han asked in surprise. "Of course," the notionless saint said proudly. "It's very simple. She's a member of the 9 snake tribe." Ling Han was confused. What did this have to do with which tribe she came from? Seeing this, Empress Luanxing decided to tell him. Otherwise, the notionless saint would also say that he couldn't hide it. She said, "The 9 snake tribe has an innate ability, and that's the ability to have 9 doppelgangers." Ling Han faltered for a moment before coming to a realization, and said, "These are your doppelgangers? Wait, 9 kings, those are your 9 doppelgangers." "That's right." Empress Luanxing nodded. He finally understood why the notionless saint said that Empress Luanxing's power should have reached 9 stars, but the power she displayed was far from that level. That was because this empress had divided her power among her 9 doppelgangers. No wonder the 9 kings had such a high status, and received the unreasonable support of the empress. The reason was simple. The 9 kings were Empress Luanxing. When Ling Han was still a little confused, Empress Luanxing continued, "I cultivate the 9 deaths heaven art, and I can create 9 doppelgangers. As long as all of them reach the peak stage of the heavenly body tier, and then return to my main body, I'll reach the pinnacle level of the heavenly body tier." Ling Han's eyes widened and he said, "In fact, you can break through to the eternal river tier. It's just that you want to cultivate the heavenly body tier to perfection, so you haven't broken through all this time. What do you think?" Empress Luanxing said proudly. Ling Han fell silent, but he was very impressed by this empress. As expected of the talented and bold empress, In order to pursue perfection, she didn't hesitate to go through so much trouble, and created 9 doppelgangers to cultivate together. He said, "What if something happens to one of the doppelgangers? Then I'll suffer a permanent Dao injury, and I won't be able to attain the title of the strongest. Thank you for everyone's support all this time. This time I hope that everyone can support the Honor Hall of the Fan Festival of the 55th Fan Festival, as well as the general election of works. Additionally, there were also some red packets and gifts on the Fan Festival. Collect them and continue to subscribe." You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.